Hi, I'm Ian. Want to live extraordinarily? It may seem difficult, but with Cebu Landmasters, it's possible. Let me show you. First, they give you hands-on service. From their sales and customer care team prior and during turnover, to their in-house property management team when you've settled in. Plus, their amenities are carefully planned and well-developed, like a clubhouse with pool, a gym, and even a chapel. You can choose from a wide range of developments: residential, offices, mixed use, townships, and even hotels. Everything for the lifestyle you want. With over 50 developments in the best locations, Cebu Landmasters is now the leading local housing developer in key Vismin cities. So you see, you can live extraordinarily when your real estate developer goes to great lengths for you. Live extraordinarily with Cebu Landmasters.
Things keep getting better because the sun you've loved is now smart.
The sun brings in a new day and everything changes.
Get used to a more seamless prepaid experience. Load via smart retailers, the GigaLife app, and the online store. Say hello to even more promos, events, deals, and partnerships under Smart. Make the most of your Giga with even more Giga promos suited to your needs. And don't worry, you get to keep your Sun mobile number as you move on to Smart, the country's fastest mobile data network. Now you see why? Welcome to Smart!
Welcome to the GigaLife. Your passions, your stories, your life. Simplified with just one app. This is the future. The GigaLife in just one tap. Experience more Giga moments when you make the smart choice. With the Philippines' fastest mobile data network. How do I know it's T1? Simple, smart ako.
Guys, here, try this. Wait, let's make this extra. Ta-da! Making spicy tofu stew? This works best.
Uy, gising! Uy, ikaw na!
Just because we need to keep our distance doesn't mean we have to stay distant. Stay close to your passions with free stories for all. Get 14 gigabytes for Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter for just 99 pesos. Share your passions, share your stories. Download the GigaLife app and choose free stories.
Ganda kayong mulok daw nung nakatawa. Kung magtagalog ni perte daw gahi at hindi pa riyan ninyo hilig nga mo chismis. Mas maayo pag ninyo mo in English.
Abi siguro ninyo wak may mga grado. Diha mo na sayot kami mas edukado. Kitang tanan gusto nga mo maayo. Pwede ra panindot tayo diri lang magsuya ay.
Kung sports ang atong istoryaan. Sa basketball Bisaya dili malupigan. Ernest Batson captain for kita permi ang number 1. Pinakasigat the best si Pacman.
Sige lang mong ingon na mong dila kay gahe. Suya lang mo amo ang pinakagahe. Among braso ba pinakagahe. Pero kasi na mo humok di siya gahe.
Bisaya ko, Kristemo ko. Sama tipolong mas bati yung iligan.
Daghan ka ayong mga nindot nga suruyan. Kami king Surigao, Siquijor o Kagusan. Bumagyat Cebu, Davao, San Carlos o Cagayan. Magpangitadyo ka kung imong matuan.
Kung gusto ka mami ng maayong nagkanta, daghan ka ayo labi na mga Cebuana. Maayong musaya budo sa guban pa, perting kusuga muki ay umuzumba. Bisaya ko, irespeto ko. Bisaya ko, I'm proud na Bisaya ko. Buutan ko, Bisaya ko. Irespeto ko, I'm proud na Bisaya ko.
Kami mga Bisaya, isip na ay prinsipyo. Dili mahadlok bisag kinsa ay lang ilapte ninyo. Anda mo tabang mo sabot og mo serbisyo. Kaliwat mini dagoy og ni lapu-lapu.
Inyong bugal-bugalan o sa ngano-ngano man, kita puro Pilipino ngano ni pag-away man. Nagiusa o pagkuswag ang atong ipatungan, dapat magsinapdanay, dili magdinautay.
Kitang tanan maning kamot para sa kaayuan. Bisag lisod buhaton aron ang kalinaw matagang paan. No one, there's so much hate all the time. Stop the hate, yo, spread peace and love for the motherland.
Bisaya ko, respeto ko. Bisaya ko, I'm proud na Bisaya ko. Buutan ko, Bisaya ko. Irespeto ko, I'm proud na Bisaya ko. Bisaya
Sa ngano-ngano man, kita puro Pilipino ngayon mag-away sa aron bawat. There's so much hate all the time. Stop the hate, yo, spread peace and love for the motherland.
Bisaya ko, irespeto ko. Na Bisaya ko, I'm proud na Bisaya ko.
Maayong adlaw kanatong tanan. Welcome to Day 3 of Cebu Design Week 2020. I'm your host, Kay Batikin, live from Holy Cow Gallery Store in Cebu. The video we saw before the countdown features the Cebuano performing arts community as they come together for the first time since the lockdown. Cebu Design Week and the National Commission for Culture and the Arts believe in the local performing arts industry and want to support this sector that has been especially affected by the current challenges. In a collaborative production of Two Tin Cans Philippines Incorporated with the Sinulog Idols, Kwangming Institute of Performing Arts, and Queens Cebu, featuring Monica Cuenco, Ralph Malyapre, Philip Mangcol, Zayardi Ramos, Coco Caballes, Yesha de la Calzada, this is Kuya Brian's Bisaya. Since its conception 3 years ago, Cebu Design Week has advocated for the creative industries and communities here in Cebu. In October of 2019, it was a realized communal victory as Cebu officially became a UNESCO Creative City of Design. The pandemic has abruptly set back and postponed, unfortunately, a lot of what we had planned as follow-through. But then this is a design problem. How do we adapt to this new situation and still push through with our plans for Cebu Design Week? To give us a background of how Cebu Design Week has adapted to the present challenges and to formally welcome everyone to Day 3, here is Ms. Mary Booth, overall CDW Chairperson.
Welcome to Cebu Design Week 2020, the Great ReCREATE. Threatened by the economic fallout of a global pandemic, we are called to recognize new paths, identify new leaders, and formulate a new vision. After the pandemic hit, we took a hard look in the mirror and asked ourselves, what are we here for? Our mission is to connect, create, and cultivate a network for design. We decided this year is not the year for us to call a retreat from that mission, especially after we won acceptance to the United Nations Creative Cities Network in November 2019. So, with our now very limited budget, we did what all Cebuanos are famous for, doing more with less. We reached out to our creative network and developed our Creatives in Quarantine, Stay Home, Stay Creative Facebook series, a lively and inspiring series of short videos with stories of creativity and resilience by Cebu designers. We then turned our attention to the manufacturers and exporters of Cebu with our hashtag What Cebu Can Do series. The resulting videos made during the quarantine are a testament to the quality of Cebu exporters. And we continue to expand the world of Cebu design through our affiliation with the Cebu UNESCO Creative Cities of Design Committee. As the virus continued its assault on our capacity to gather, we faced a difficult decision: what to do with Cebu Design Week 2020. Again, we decided that our creative network had ideas to share, advice, tools, and information to get Cebu going again. Cebu Design Week 2020, the Great ReCREATE, was born. We'd like to thank our sister organizer, Cebu Furniture Industries Foundation, Inc., our government sponsors, the Philippine Department of Trade and Industry, the Philippine National Commission for Culture and the Arts, the Philippine National Commission for UNESCO, the Office of the Presidential Assistant to the Visayas, and the cities of Cebu and Mandaue. Our co-presenting sponsor is Smart Communications, and our omnibus sponsor and Cebu Design Week 2020 official real estate partner is Cebu Landmasters. Special thanks go out to Congresswoman Lollipop Uano Dizon for supporting the creative sector of Cebu. More than anything, we want to thank our trustees and the Cebu and Visayas creative community for keeping faith in what we do and supporting us with their creative output. We thank you, our audience, for giving us your time and attention. We hope you will be inspired and come away with some tools for your own journey and go into the world to create, cultivate, and collaborate for a better world.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, Mary. She reaches out to us from the US, where she currently is with family. As Mary mentioned, Cebu Design Week has rolled out programs from as early as May of this year. When the odds are stacked against you, it's actually more exciting to see what you can do with it. So let's watch this short video.
When we started Cebu Design Week, we wanted to connect people, encourage everyone to create, and cultivate the landscape of creativity and innovation.
Expect to see new content on our social media pages, a virtual platform for creatives to sell their products and services, and other digital programs we will run to support creatives and those affected by the current situation.
CDW 2020 may be one of the most innovative and meaningful undertakings we are going to be doing in a very long time. Connect, create, cultivate.
There is so much we can accomplish together as a community. Community rebuilding is indeed what we'll be looking at for this year's theme, The Great ReCREATE. COVID-19 continues to sweep the world in a frenetic sprint for damage control, bringing to the fore pre-pandemic weaknesses and accelerating mega trends at an unprecedented pace. There is a need to assess and reevaluate the role of creatives at large, and now, more than ever, design and the arts are very essential in moving forward. But how can we convey this? Cebu Design Week aims to spotlight key pivot elements from different angles, relevant to communities and creatives of any industry. Under this overarching theme, there are 5 subcategories for our summit. Asa na si Lapu-Lapu? Where is Lapu-Lapu? Which was tackled Monday afternoon. Yesterday, we had 2 sessions that covered opportunity from adversity. In the morning, we looked at case studies of individuals and creatives and how they surmounted all of the odds stacked against them. In the afternoon, we talked about organizations and enablers. How, when they felt that spark, did they pull an entire community with them to their moving forward? Our current session this morning is Rethinking Tomorrow, Institutionalizing Creativity, which will be followed by this afternoon's Rethinking Tomorrow, Emerging Futures. There's a progression in the talks that we're going to be presenting. Cebu Design Week Day 3 is co-presented by Smart Communications. Today, our theme, Rethinking Tomorrow, Institutionalizing Creativity, emphasizes that creativity is an important survival element in today's world. Attaining a proactive, demand-driven strategy for the Philippine creative industries requires a multi-disciplinary, intersectional approach. It requires a fixed orientation towards a future consistent with a common vision for all stakeholders. We want to know who are the people protecting, promoting, and supporting the creative sector. They are ultimately preserving our culture and arts and the traditions that make up our national identity. Let's meet them and learn best practices to bring about positive transformation and collaboration. I'm sure everyone is excited to hear from the speakers. We have 6 this morning who will share their experiences in these challenges, and after which we will have the panel discussion, which will open the floor up for questions. So if you've got any inquiries, please write them down or put them up in the chat screen, and we have a team who will collate them and later on field the questions for all of you. So hang on to them or express them to our team and they will be answered later. So here we are. Our first speaker is a creative entrepreneur, design advocate, a community crusader who is passionate about optimizing the intrinsic talent of Cebu, a Wharton graduate and multi-awarded fashion accessories designer and entrepreneur. He rounds us off with representing Cebu in the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs. He's also a fitness buff, a good friend, the CDW Blue Mango Awards and Affiliate Events Chair, and the private sector lead in attaining Cebu's UNESCO Creative City of Design designation. Let us watch this pre-recorded presentation by Mr. Gil Zer Butch Carungay.
Hey guys! Good day and maayong buntag from Cebu, a UNESCO City of Design and Condé Nast Traveler's best island in Asia for the year. I appreciate you tuning in as we kick off Day 3 of Cebu Design Week 2020. Kudos and thanks to the organizers for a great summit so far, and to Kay for that kind intro. Before we jump into the discussion, let me play a quick vid for those of you who are not that familiar with our island. So, here goes.
Fringed by white sand beaches, and surrounded by sparkling turquoise seas, in the center of the 7,000-plus islands that make up the Philippine archipelago, is the historic and dynamic city of Cebu.
For over 500 years, it has been a hub of trade, a center of culture, and a model of resiliency.
Now a bustling metropolis, Metro Cebu is the second largest urban center in the country, while Cebu province is ranked number 1 in terms of assets. It has a diverse economy that is dominated by tourism, real estate, international trade, and tech services.
Cebu is also the venue of Sinulog, a week-long creative extravaganza that draws 2 million visitors a year to celebrate the child Jesus and the city's unique distinction as the cradle of Christianity in Asia.
The award-winning Mactan Cebu International Airport is the second busiest in the country, and its leading global gateway. It has gained worldwide praise for its design excellence, sustainable technologies, and superior passenger experience.
Identified by the British Council as the Philippines' creative hub in 2008, Cebu was designated as the ASEAN City of Culture from 2010 to 2011. In 2019, it joined the UNESCO Creative Cities Network as a city of design.
Estimated at $500 million, or 7% of the local GDP, Cebu's multifaceted creative industries span practically all the different disciplines, as identified by the UN Commission on Trade and Development.
Long an export-oriented economy, it is not surprising that functional design is the largest creative subsector in Cebu. Furniture and furnishings is the main specialization in this field, followed by apparel and fashion accessories.
Architecture, advertising, and graphics make up the bulk of creative services, the second largest subsector in Cebu's design landscape.
Rounding out the top 3 is visual arts, which is composed of painting, sculpture, and photography.
So there you have it, folks. Please pardon Mr. and Miss AI voiceover for mispronouncing Cebu. They obviously need a couple more rounds of machine learning to get this right. All kidding aside, now it's time to get to work and attempt to tackle this nebulous concept of institutionalizing creativity in the context of Cebu. What it is, why is it important, who's involved, how do we intend to go about it, and where and when are we implementing? I will be tackling this from both a theoretical and practical perspective, and will be citing case studies towards the latter part of the presentation. But first, let's define creativity, which by the way is a fairly modern word, having only come into existence about 150 years ago. Webster's defines it as the ability or power to create, to bring into existence, to invest with new forms, to produce through imaginative skill. In the modern sense, this can mean a product, service, or idea. Creative cities, on the other hand, as defined by UNESCO, are those that have identified creativity as a strategic factor in sustainable urban development. So in the context of cities, institutionalized creativity is a lofty goal that will take a long and arduous time to achieve. However, it is something that needs to be initiated if we are to progress as a creative community. So what are the hallmarks of institutionalized creativity? First, it is when the creative agenda is no longer an afterthought and is embedded in the programs, policies, and processes of all stakeholders at every level. Second, it is strategic and part of an overall roadmap that is relevant, robust, and resilient. Third, it is independent of political cycles and can exist and flourish no matter who is in power. So why, you may ask, is it important to institutionalize creativity in a city's developmental agenda? Creativity, while ubiquitous in our day and age, is often perceived as not essential and is not considered by many to be a key factor in sustainable urban development. However, I would beg to argue that not only is it essential, but critical in ensuring that Cebu, or any other city for that matter, remain relevant, dynamic, and progressive. By institutionalizing creativity, we acknowledge its importance, utilize its formidable arsenal, and unleash possibilities that would not have been otherwise thought possible. We are also able to utilize limited resources much more efficiently, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over and over again, and instead build on top of past learnings, experiences, and accomplishments. In the long term, I strongly believe that by institutionalizing creativity, the entire community becomes much more proactive, versatile, and resilient against both internal and external shocks, and therefore able to achieve more meaningful growth. As I mentioned before, institutionalizing creativity will not happen overnight, and the road ahead is fraught with many challenges. There are, however, steps we can all take as we progress forward. First, we need to create more awareness, drum up excitement, and really inculcate in the community the need for such a movement. Next, we need to introduce more platforms for collaboration and really foster an environment for innovation. Third, we need to accelerate proofs of concept, which can then lead to force multipliers for the entire ecosystem. Lastly, we need to establish long-term assurances, system redundancies, and resiliency mechanisms to ensure the future of the movement. At this point of the discussion, let me shift from the hypothetical to the practical and talk about real-life applications in the last few slides. When we submitted the bid to UNESCO last year, we had to formulate a 5-year developmental plan for Cebu's creative industries. One of the key components of that plan is the Creative Cebu Grid, which is composed of local and national government, the academe, and the private sector. International collaborators, while not technically part of the grid, are indicated at the bottom to signify their importance. The grid taps existing institutions, movements, and relationships and harnesses them in a more structured way that, number one, continuously maps resources and initiatives as well as provide a forum for knowledge exchange. 2, identify and bridge gaps, both current and projected. And 3, align strategies, initiatives, and goals so that redundancies are reduced and synergies achieved. We're hoping to fully activate the grid very soon, but have already been utilizing the structure in the last few months, especially once COVID-19 blindsided all of us earlier this year. When the pandemic forced us into lockdowns in mid-March, we used the opportunity to refine the data that was originally gathered with much effort last year. While we knew how large Cebu's creative ecosystem was, no one had any idea of how much each subsector actually contributed until a few months ago. On top of that, we were able to quantify how each subsector weathered the pandemic based on 8 key parameters, such as dependence on large gatherings, reliance on international logistics, and consumption while in lockdown. We were also able to confirm that creative MSMEs were amongst the most impacted while in lockdown, as every aspect of the creative value chain was severely impacted, from supply all the way to fulfillment. The research also validated that the pandemic brought to fore pre-existing weaknesses, such as multiple job holding, underemployment, and seasonality. It also accelerated changes, such as digital transformation, that were well on their way pre-COVID. One key intervention introduced was a business reboot toolkit that utilizes strategic frameworks in a more simplified way so they are easier to digest, onboard, and deploy. To gamify the process, the toolkits are being integrated with the Blue Mango Awards. Substantial cash incentives await the winners, courtesy of Cebu Landmasters, and will be awarded during one of their events in December. This year, the Blue Mango Awards will pivot to reflect the current realities and as a way of incenting creativity while alleviating adverse impacts through significant cash prizes Together with Landmasters, Smart Communications is also supporting a few categories. There will be 3 prize tiers under 8 relevant and timely challenges that range from creative PPEs, food presentation, indoor herb gardens, creative COVID-19 responses, the business of creativity, and small-scale street art, which is our first foray into urban acupuncture, where little interventions, when replicated enough, can impact the built environment and have the potential of positively altering the cityscape. To give participants more time, we have pushed back the deadline to November 25 and will be awarding in December 2020, just in time for Christmas. In terms of strategic alignment, it goes without saying that we will continue to work very closely with Cebu Design Week Foundation and DTI7, both of whom were critical in attaining the UNESCO designation in the first place. With Cebu City, which technically owns the designation, we will be activating through the Cebu City Tourism Commission, to which I have recently been appointed to. The first projects there will include Highlands and ecotourism, as well as next year's quincentennial celebration, both of which will be great case studies on how the creative industries can work with the tourism sector to really magnify output. Another initiative in the pipeline is the Alt Mobility Project being championed by Cebu Leads Foundation, which advocates for the use of bicycles as a major means of future mobility in the metro. These are just a few examples of how we can harness our network and cover both bottom-up and top-down approaches. The important thing is we not only realize theoretical progress, but actually contribute to creative real-life solutions, addressing everyday concerns that have meaningful impact to each and every Cebuano. As mentioned earlier, major Phase 3 initiatives such as NUDE, the Cebu Museum of Design, and the revitalization of the city's historical core had to be shelved. However, we hope to initiate these projects very soon. Unfortunately, I have run out of time, but still need to mention that plans going forward have been reset to now include COVID relief, recover, and re-energize, with the institutionalized phase commencing in 2023. All initiatives will be anchored to the Sustainable Development Goals, which is the UN's blueprint on how to achieve a better and more sustainable future for ourselves, each other, and the planet, and include global challenges such as poverty, education, economic growth, environmental degradation, and peace. In the long term, we truly believe that by engaging and enabling the city's creative sectors in meaningful and sustainable city building, we are able to achieve our long-term vision of a city that excites and a Cebu that delights, that is not only livable, but lovable. So now this presentation comes to an end, but the conversations and collaborations will continue. I look forward to answering your questions at the open forum later. However, please feel free to reach out to me on any of these platforms. Thank you very much for your time and attention. Stay safe and creative, everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much for that, Butch. He will join us later in the panel discussions. If you've got anything that you'd like to ask him from his presentation earlier, hang on to that or go and talk to our staff. Field your questions in the chat box and they will collate it later. Attaining the City of Design designation is talking the walking that Cebu has actually been doing for so many generations. But creativity in the city is lived and worked on. It's a tool for survival. Recognition of this and support for it is essential. You can't build up on something that you don't recognize. Social development then plays a key role in integrating creative entrepreneurship. To talk more about this, our next speaker is a well-known social development leader and mover of community, whose expertise are in social development, social enterprise, innovation, and finance. Specifically, she has led the Ramon Aboitiz Foundation Incorporated, called RAFI, one of the biggest and most dynamic foundations in the country, to establish innovative programs that answer contemporary societal needs using 21st century solutions. All this while at the same time ensuring financial capability and sustainability. Help me welcome Ms. Domi Chua. Good morning, ma'am.
Hi, good morning, Kay. Thank you so much, Kay, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. I hope you are doing well despite the threat and anxiety due to COVID-19. But let me first congratulate the movers of this summit, the creative team of Cebu, for bringing together like-minded individuals who believe that at this time of the pandemic and adversity, we must be creative more than ever in order to thrive and survive under this new normal. And speaking of such, let me share with you the experience how imagination and creativity prompted Rafi to rethink its strategies to move its vision of touching people, shaping the future. The adverse impact of COVID-19 sets back the socio-economic gains that our country earned in the past years of relentless efforts to make our economy strong and at par with our counterparts in the region. The downward spiral of the economy caused massive unemployment and rising poverty incidents. Consequently, this had huge impact on the lives of the many Filipinos, especially on health, hunger, nutrition, and education. The same societal issues which Rafi addressed in the last 5 decades and had gained traction, but now we are experiencing major setback. Indeed, COVID-19 had impacted on Rafi's programs and services as indicated in the following slides. In the Rafi Microfinance, which alleviates the economic well-being of our micro-entrepreneurs, the slide indicated a downward trend in our financial performance with a higher projected portfolio at risks. Worst of all, 67% of our clients were impacted due to the various limitations of the government's policy on mitigating the impact of COVID on the health of the nation. Starting March 15, our Center for Leaders in Balamban declared a course break and all bookings for on-site training for the year were either canceled or postponed. Because tourism is adversely hit by the pandemic, the Casa Gorordo Museum was closed last March, and the opening of our new facility, the Cabilian Center, is indefinitely postponed. Our biodiversity program, the 1-2-3 expansion initiative covering other geographical areas of the country was stalled. And because of the suspension of classes and DepEd is still in the process of adjusting its method of delivery of learning, Rafi has to stall its existing programs and partnership with DepEd region. But how did Rafi adapt to the pandemic? In Rafi, we follow this framework of adjusting and adapting to the new normal. First, we set up our reaction and response measures for our internal staff and those of the communities we serve. Second, we initiated measures in order to come back stronger than our setback. And lastly, we reinvented and innovated. In the reaction and response measures, Rafi allowed its team to work from home. In this arrangement, we provided our team a guide how to manage their time and remain productive. Rafi also attended to the welfare of its employees during the pandemic by having them vaccinated, provide them advanced salaries, PPEs, and many, many more. We also reskill and retool employees' competency and established a learning management system that later transitioned as the Talent Development Institute of Rafi. And as far as our community response action, we implemented several initiatives to respond to the needs of the community in mitigating the impact of COVID. In the second measure, how did we renew and rebound? First, we formulated our DX transformation roadmap that will institutionalize Rafi's vision of high-touch, high-tech services aimed at utilizing and leverage on relevant technology as an accelerator of the organization's transformation by engaging stakeholders, empowering employees, optimizing operations, and transforming products and services to achieve a greater impact. Second, we shifted channels of program delivery from primarily on-site to digital training platforms. Third, we accelerated the non-financial services to our microfinance clients by creating the client's business development services. And we ramp up the Knowledge Management Center to facilitate knowledge collaboration and sharing, both internally and externally, and to position RAFI as an information hub and provider of data and information to our stakeholders, policymakers, and the other members of the community of social development practitioners. As we step back from the quagmire of COVID-19, our organization continued to seek new opportunities to support a strategic pillar of growth and sustainability. We applied creative approaches to our strategies and visualizes the future with so much optimism and hope that we can come back better and bigger. Thus, our senior leaders did a collective imagination session, how to create the future by altering the present. We do believe that imagination serves as our door to possibilities, as it is where creativity, ingenuity, and thinking outside of the box begins. Our mission in the process was to find new paths to growth in addressing our foundation's end goal of alleviating the lives and well-being of those people we served. This is our creativity exercise. This is very practical, and I think everyone will know how to do this. First, we just do a breathing exercise. Inhale, exhale. Then reflect at the most opportune time and listen to soft music or go for a walk. Or you can do whatever you want to do, but for as long as you can, that's kind of an ambience that will make you, more imaginative and more creative in your thinking. Second, you have to do a self-appreciative inquiry, which involves questioning yourself beyond the past and present or the known alternatives. The process will prompt you to explore better and fresh ideas. In doing this activity, it is most important to be customer-centric in thinking. Third, you can rearrange existing knowledge, information, and make it into usable combinations. Then, do a dig and deep dive in order to enhance your external and critical awareness of the various factors and dig out important elements that will prompt in reframing, rethinking, and discovering new opportunities. Then you can do a structured opportunity mapping. And lastly, and this is very important, be optimistic and stay hopeful. Our human nature's default in times of crisis is to think whether we must fight or take flight, and that is running away from the situation. But is the latter the best option? For us leaders and creative leaders at that, in our respective organization, it is our primary duty to inspire our teams, reinvigorate their trust and confidence, and enkindle in them the hope for a better future. And it is only through our big and creative ideas and vision that we can rally our teams to work towards that end goal. As an outcome of this exercise, we were able to reframe our business canvas model in RAFI and created innovative new programs and services like the following. We would like to do the food ecosystem. It is a social enterprise initiative that will bring into one value chain our grassroots entrepreneurs from the producers to the market. This will also provide food security and employment to the husbands and children of our clients and become part of the value chain, either in the logistics or the business operations. Second, we decided that we will be into Community Tech Hub. It is a program that is designed to narrow the digital divide, especially in our rural communities and for those sectors who are deprived of access to new and digital technologies. Third, we are now having this learning on demand. It is a Netflix of all RAFI's training modules where our market can access anytime, anywhere through subscription. On heritage tours and conferences, to keep our people in touch with their heritage, we provide them access to online tours of the different historical and cultural sites of Cebu. And lastly, we set up an online culture hub where you can access curated historical and cultural stories of Cebu. How are we institutionalizing creativity in RAFI? The quest for excellence and be more effective in our programs and services drive us to institutionalize creativity and innovation in our workplace. So this year and in the coming years, we will be launching two major initiatives that will respond to this direction. First, we would like the RAFI New Vision. This is an innovation program which aims at equipping our employees with the skills and tools necessary to inspire ideas and innovations that drive at producing impactful results and incremental breakthroughs in the problems the organization wants to solve. This facilitates think tank sessions, presenting innovation and improvement projects to the management and senior leadership team, and recognizing best innovations during the annual RAFI Innovation Conference. Second, the Community Tech Hub. This community-based tech hub is intended to bring the digital world to the grassroots. This will provide our public school students access to their classroom lessons, improve their digital skills, and for the young adults to encourage them to creatively address their community issues through collaborative and innovative means through technology. We also look forward that the center will cater as a training facility for our grassroots entrepreneurs to improve their digital literacy and or other skills in improving their livelihood or even setting up a new economic activity. We must be more creative in times of adversity. We believe that the formula adversity plus acceptance is equals to opportunity and hope is our mantra to help our grassroots achieve their aspiration. And in closing, let me say this, that great opportunities will happen if you're open to possibilities. Thus, I would like to say, continue to imagine and imagine and imagine, and let this imagination be your impetus to becoming creative. Thank you so much and stay safe all the time. Good morning once again.
Thank you so much for that, Miss Domi. There's a Japanese proverb that goes, "Gambatte to, gambatta hito mo airu," which means doing your best lets you meet people who are also doing their best. These best practices for pivoting are brilliant for cross-assessing our own path. Consider that Ms. Domi always uses we. We have to build on each other's strength. Before we proceed to our third speaker, we would like to thank our government partners who made Cebu Design Week 2020 possible. The Office of the Presidential Assistant for the Visayas, the Department of Trade and Industry Region 7, the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, the UNESCO National Commission for the Philippines, the local governments of Cebu City and Mandaue City, with special mention to Congresswoman Lollipop Oano Dizon. Thank you very much. These organizations and individuals know that the creative industries in the Philippines have to be supported and cultivated for a stronger economy and a livable society. Without further ado, let us proceed to our third speaker. Our third speaker is the Marketing and Research Development Director of Castellex Industrial Corporation and has been for 30 years, with special focus on the U.S. furniture market. She is also the founder and CEO of Jamaica Markets Corporation, a 24-year-old company exporting and manufacturing home decor. Presently, she is a trustee of the Cebu Furniture Industries Foundation Incorporated and the Marketing and Ways and Means co-chairperson of the Cebu Design Week. Let us hear from Ms. Laurie Boquiren. Good morning, Ms. Laurie.
Good morning, Kay. Can you hear me?
Take it away, ma'am. Yeah,
Okay. Hi. Good morning, everybody. I am honored and at the same time humbled to represent Cebu Furniture Industries Foundation Incorporated. This is a 46-year-old organization of furniture manufacturers in Cebu that has weathered a lot of storm through the years. And this is by far the strongest and the longest storm we have encountered in our careers as furniture makers. Let me start with a very inspiring quote from Charles Darwin. It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change. Like it or not, we all needed to adapt to the present situation or perish quietly into the night. And here are some of the seemingly insurmountable challenges encountered by many of our members in the furniture industry during the pandemic. We have drained funds during the lockdown, a lot of delayed payments from clients. We had postponement of orders, or worse, cancellation of orders. And our furniture, our item, is not considered an essential item, and therefore it's not on the top on the priority list of buyers. Our clients or buyers temporarily close down their stores, or worse, have declared bankruptcy. And we have realized that many of us in this industry has no, or we have the absence of digital platform, or actually really do not have any digital platform. So what did we do? Cebu Furniture Industries Foundation took these challenges very seriously. The board of trustees kept regular discussions and meetings remotely, thanks to Zoom, addressing the challenges of its present members. And here are some of the projects we have done during the lockdown. Number one, Project Resurgence. We reconnected to as many of our members to find out their present conditions, their possible needs, how we can help them by creating a furniture community chat group. This became a platform to disseminate news from PhilExport National, that's Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Department of Trade and Industry, and the Regional Development Council, which is for us, we are very fortunate that is being chaired by one of our trustees in CFIF, which is Mr. Kenneth Cabonpoy. And we have written a regular and very informative CFIF newsletter, which are regularly sent out to all our members by email and through Viber chat group and CFIF social media accounts containing articles and directly and indirectly impacting the industry. Number three, we continuously lobbied with the government to make sure that there is an ease in doing business. This helps the current businesses grow and encourages startups and makers to start their own businesses. And number four, we still have the student internship program in partnership with schools and leading universities to ensure that there are new entrants to the industry. Number five, we created a Table Talk series. This is a series of talks and sessions and webinars led and conducted by leading industry members, generously sharing their expertise and knowledge on topics normally kept as their respective trade secrets prior to this pandemic. We started the talk, and the initial talk was with Mr. Kenneth Cabonpoy's group. And number six, we have restructured the CFIF website, or when we call One Stop Shop, a platform for business matching and sourcing for our members and potential buyers, accessible 24/7 and all year round. And number seven, we're thinking of our digital approach to Philippine International Fair 20 show, Philippine International Furniture Show 2021. This is our very own international furniture trade show. We wanted it to be safe and very viable to our CFIF members, as well as our regular buyers and customers. And last but not the least, we continue to support and invest in Cebu Design Week. Cebu Design Week's advocacies and activities, which were all highlighted in this design summit, the Great ReCREATE. Cebu's furniture industry. How do you institutionalize creativity in Cebu? It's a tough question, but some of them were answered by the previous speakers. But this is what I believe in my heart that creativity is not something we do in Cebu Furniture Industries Foundation. It is something that we are. Cebu's furniture industry is not just driven by trends. They are driven by creativity. We use humble materials and we elevate those humble materials, deserving of quality and designs for the world to appreciate and treasure for a lifetime. And here are just a few samples of those materials. We play around and manipulate bamboo and combine them with other materials like metal. We weave lampakanay in different colors and different styles. And these are shown and being sold in the most high-end showrooms across the US. We work on La Raffia, which is coming from Bohol. We laminate them on tables and chairs and on all decorative accessories like the trays and boxes. We use abaca for weaving. And we also use still a lot of stones that can regularly be found in Cebu. And aluminum, handcrafted, hand-casted, hand-forged aluminum. And you could see that it would really, really come out so beautifully if properly used and properly designed. These are just a very few of the items that we use in Cebu furniture industry market. So, and I can assure you that there's many, many more. So I'd like to end this slide by saying that really creativity takes courage, borrowing from Henry Matisse. And I would just like to acknowledge that this slide or this presentation was in collaboration with my friends from the performing arts. During the lockdown, the hardest hit sector, I think, are the performing artists. They're close to my heart. They're my friends. And what I did was collaborated with them and asked them, because they used to do our when we do come up with performances on stage. These are the people behind the scene that does the posters. They do the graphics. They do the write-ups. And we collaborated for these slides. So you could see that this is written by the art director of Tutin Cans, Ed Xavier, and their management director or editor-in-chief, Charlene Virlouet. And the sources that I gathered, some of the slides, came from Lovely Flores, the operations manager of CFIF, and also I borrowed some slides from Anjun Valenzuela, the executive director of CFIP Manila. Now, since the presentation ended, I would like just to list down, to take advantage of the presence of our good and honorable Congressman de Venecia, what the government can do for our industry. So we would like to ask the following: funding support for the salary of the registered workers of the MSMEs, special financing program for the MSMEs with a very low interest rate, if possible, 1.5 to 3% per annum. Provide incentives to hotel owners and developers and project managers who will purchase local furniture for their requirements. Double deduction on taxes, if possible. Waiver of all export-related processing documentation fees in the next 6 months after the lockdown, as well as the fees for the importation of raw materials. Financing through government banks with developmental objectives. Establishment of an online productivity center community. Revival of national competency standards and training regulations for the furniture industry and establishment of fabrication laboratories. And we also have some wish list, creation of virtual showrooms, establishment of virtual trade shows. We need to have more designers to help companies develop new collections based on the new normal. If we can, we have to hire international designers to provide trends, to update and advance skills continuously of the Philippine manufacturers, thereby improving competitiveness in the global arena. Promote further Philippine designs through promotion in international magazines and various design. Thank you. I think that's the end of my presentation. I would like to answer your questions later at the Q&A program. And now I'll turn the microphone to you, back to you, Kay.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Laurie, especially for coherently recognizing what is immediately needed. Pulling together different communities into one acting body requires dedication, empathy, and innovative solutions. But how to make this sustainable? How to make it span beyond business lifespans and pull an entire city towards a common goal? Our fourth speaker was the Senior Vice President for Marketing, Communication, and Innovation of Nestle Philippines and Nestle China for 9 years. Presently, he is the President and Founder of the Creative Economy Council of the Philippines. Let me call on screen Mr. Paolo Mercado. Good morning, sir.
Morning. Morning. Yes, thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. I'm very happy to participate in Cebu Design Week. The talk that I'm going to give this morning, or this very brief sharing, is really a view of what's happening right now. And if you're going to institutionalize creativity, we're institutionalizing it in a period of disruption. If I were to do an alternative title to this talk, it's really about redesigning your creative organization during disruption, because disruption requires organization. And if you're going to institutionalize creativity, organizational design is key. And it has to be adaptive to the current reality that we have. So before I dive into that, maybe just one slide on what did the Philippine creative economy look like prior to 2020. And here, I just compiled some of the data that has been available on the size and scale of creative industries. So the value of creative industries was actually estimated by IPO Philippines by taking a look at copyright-based industries, and they took a look at national 2012 data from the Census of Philippine Business and Industry. And in that study, they were able to put together that Philippine creative industries was valued at about 690 billion pesos, which at that time was 6.5% of GDP. Now that is very large. On average, globally, industries only make up 3 to 4% of national GDP. If you take that 6.5% and you apply it to 2019 GDP, it could be that creative industries in the Philippines is worth 1.3 trillion pesos, or roughly the size of the BPO industry. In fact, perhaps even bigger than that, because historically creative industries were one of the fastest growing industries or sectors in the country. In terms of employment, the numbers were more conservative because the IPO sales study only looked at full-time employment in large establishments with over 20 people. And they counted about 750,000 people. And if you project that using the same methodology, it's still under 1 million. But what it doesn't count is actually smaller creative organizations of under 20 people and the millions of independent contractors who actually assist creative industries or established creative businesses on a part-time basis. Now, there are no robust studies on the independent contractors for creative industries, but it's about 1:1 or about 1 million as well. Where there are studies is with online creative freelancers who do work for overseas clients. And easily, these are also about 1 million people. So this is a hidden BPO in the country. So in terms of value and employment, quite a very large and promising industry. And finally, in terms of exports, this is unfortunately where we lag behind. Total Philippine creative exports, as estimated by UNCTAD in 2018, was about 4.1 billion. This ranks us as number 5 in the ASEAN region, and we only have 2% of the total Asian creative exports marketplace. However, the hidden gem in this data is that 3.2 billion of these exports are in creative services, primarily in software design, animation, and game development. And we rank actually number 1 in the ASEAN region in terms of creative services. And as noted also previously, we do a lot of freelance outsourcing, and the value of freelance outsourcing has not been estimated yet. But with over 1 million Filipinos charging about $11 per hour, you can begin to calculate that this could be quite significant in terms of contribution. But all of this in 2020 has been disrupted, as with most businesses. And in the various conversations and talks and presentations that I've seen with the different creative industries, what I've seen is that there are different types of industries, and some of them are very badly affected. So for example, film, performing arts, heritage sites, which are dependent either on large in-person exhibitions or dependent on tourism, these are all disrupted as they really only had Q1 to earn. So if you take a look at 2020, their 2020 revenue is probably 85 to 90% disrupted versus 2019, meaning they will earn only 10 to 50% versus last year. Now, TV and radio and advertising, these are, let's say, tied by the umbilical cord, because what funds TV and radio is advertising. And without the ABS-CBN off-air impact, the impact on TV, radio, and traditional advertising is about 30%, largely because there are many businesses that have stopped advertising because their own business has been disrupted. But by taking out a very big TV network, TV and radio network, because even radio stations are disrupted. By taking these out, the impact on revenue for the total industry could be as high as 50% by the end of the year. Now, there are more resilient sectors, and software, animation, game development, digital marketing, and digital advertising, even web and graphic design. The demand is still there. There is some reduction from businesses that have gone out of business, but there are some that are actually experiencing some growth, especially those that are in e-commerce, because there's a demand not only for programming and being able to do the logistics side of e-commerce, but create advertising that creates demand for e-commerce. And of course, in terms of content online, with a lot of people staying at home, then you have a lot more content on both local and, of course, international platforms as well. So we're seeing more and more films, and now a new animation series coming out on Netflix made by Filipinos. What I did to just help visualize this is when people go to a doctor's office, especially for a pediatric office, you normally, the doctors or the pediatricians normally show the kids a pain scale so that they can articulate how severe is the pain. Is it no pain, or is it the worst pain possible, etc. And then they just point at these faces. What I did is then I just put a scale where I organized this into a pain scale where everybody's in pain right now. So there's nobody that's not disrupted, but some are worse off than others. And the pain can be because the demand is disrupted, which is the bottom part of the scale, where there's no more market. There's no one to sell to, you know, or the marketplace itself is gone, you know. Or on the other hand, there is a market, there is demand, but we cannot supply. We cannot get our stuff to the market, or we cannot produce. So, so this is how I differentiate the different sectors. So the creative industries that are involved in digital, whether it's digital creative services or digital content development, these are the ones that are in, let's say, the best place, where there is a market, and in fact, in some cases, there's a growing market for their products and services. And there are disruptions in terms of their supply, because work from home may be not ideal, or if you're dealing with large files. but ultimately they are able to cope. And with the right connectivity, they are able to be very productive. So these businesses are in the, let's say, the least disrupted, but still some pain points in that area. And then you have these sectors in the middle, where either the supply is disrupted in terms of TV and radio for reasons I've already described, or in some cases, like with lifestyle design and even architecture, there are projects that are on pause, but there are also other projects that are still continuing. So there is some demand still for these design goods. For fashion, on the other hand, people are not going out are not having bespoke clothing made because there are less social events to do. So that's a struggle. But then there's also a basic, let's say, need for fashion and replacement of items that is still there. So it's not completely collapsed demand. There is still demand for these areas. Books and textbooks is really more dependent on schools. So schools have reopened. There is a demand for this, although the demand is now more for the content rather than the physical book, which has its own challenge as well. Then finally, in the last sectors where the demand itself or the marketplace is severely disrupted are in these areas of performing arts, cinema, folk arts and crafts primarily because they're oriented to tourists, visual arts, painting and sculptures primarily for private collections because people are saving their money. And unfortunately, visual art is something that people think that, it's a postponable expense. Newspapers and magazines, this one has been a long decline, the physical print part of it, but it's been accelerated by the crisis. And then museums and heritage sites, very similar to folk arts and crafts, which are highly dependent on tourism. So the experience of disruption is actually global. It is not just the Philippines that is experiencing this. And in fact, John Hawkins, who wrote the first book on creative economy, has come up with a recent work on really the future of work and how this crisis is accelerating trends that were already there. And a podcast that I listen to on a very regular basis is from Charles Day, who talks to creative leaders and discusses how they have been coping in crisis. And I'm just going to put out some of the observations that I've seen. That for businesses where the supply or the ability to supply the market has been disrupted, the key things are, what are the changes? Of course, office work is now work from home. Before you have time-bound work, now it seems to be more timeless because when does work begin, when does it end? You have to actually, as a creative, define that for yourself. And then there are less command and control because you're in your own environment, but does this really mean empowerment? Definitely less travels and face-to-face meetings. There's an urgent demand in the Philippines, especially for reliable, fast, and affordable creativity. And some businesses are needing to downsize. Some creative businesses themselves are needing to downsize, which means less full-time employees and more contractual creatives. Opportunities, definitely online collaboration. People have talked about how this is more authentic. There's less formal hierarchy with your boss. And it's very output driven. You meet only to be able to generate an output. Walang patapon na meeting, if I were to say that. There's greater efficiency because you're not dealing with commuting time. Explosion of online learning opportunities. And as often said, e-commerce and e-business and including freelance services is exploding right now. But there are some gaps. Work-life boundaries are becoming a challenge. I mean, you really need to, as a creative and as a creative organization, establish rules of engagement because people are so accessible now. And then how do you work with teams? Some are able to do this very effectively, and some are struggling with how do you create an effective workflow for your creative team. Online access costs. As an organization, who bears the cost of online access from home? Is it the employee or is it the employer? So it's a big question here. Socialization and serendipity, because creativity is non-linear. Oftentimes, a great idea comes out of the pantry or in the bathroom, or when you're taking a cigarette break for those who smoke. And without these opportunities for informal socialization, the serendipity of creativity is lost. For some sectors, the embodied or kinesthetic or physical creativity is lost. Not everything can be done on Zoom. Dance, etc., and the discovery of things when you're crafting with your hands with a group of people, that is very difficult to do in a completely online environment. And then sources of immersive inspiration are also missing today. And finally, some threats in the supply of creativity: mental health and psychological safety, especially for those who live alone, and also for those with bosses that have no boundaries. This is actually quite difficult. Workers' privacy is an issue, and on the side of the organizations, work security. You know, the security of files, the security of platforms that they use. People have talked about Zoom bombing, where people penetrate or invade Zoom sessions, etc. There is a growing supply glut of freelance creative workers, because as creative businesses downsize, there are more freelance workers, which leads to a graphic designer becomes a dime a dozen. So this commoditizes the value of creative work. And as mentioned earlier, there is a concern, especially in countries like the Philippines, in terms of the digital divide. There is not only a digital divide in terms of access, but there's also a digital divide in terms of language. There are so many great online learning opportunities, majority are in English. So how do you close that digital divide in this environment? Then for those with demand disruption, again, this one is well known already, primarily public performances, tourism and travel, and in-person classroom education. Even if restrictions are relaxed, these are likely to remain the longest to recover. Opportunities, as has been talked about already, some of these are experimenting, piloting, really pushing hard at transforming their operations into a digital experience, from theater plays to virtual tourism to online learning and digital textbooks and ebooks. Key gaps is that digital cannot really replace the live experience. Theater is immersive co-creation. I've had experience in the theater in the past, and I can say that even if you have a script, the difference with theater is that when the audience claps, you adjust. When the audience does not clap, does not laugh, or does not react, you also adjust. So there is a co-creation to theater that is lost if you record it. Tourism, it's different when you go through a virtual experience, because you can't really say, I was there, and that matters. And then, for example, and finally for books, here it's more of a business model difficulty, because while it's easy to digitize books, once you do, it gets stolen. So monetization and distribution of digital content is really a challenge. So threats, diminished perceived value of creative output on digital. Someone would pay 2,500, sometimes even 5,000, sometimes even 15,000 for a live concert or a play. But put that on digital, and then it's a challenge to get people to pay over 500 pesos for it. I've already mentioned about books, same with museum tours, etc. And then piracy of digital content is a challenge for all creative industries. But since these industries are new to the digital content, they don't have the technologies to protect their digital rights management technologies yet to protect their content. So they haven't mastered that. So if I were to put in a nutshell, so how do these different sectors reinvent or redesign their organizations, and what should they be doing? So those in the lower right, let's say the more or less the green space, the redesign should focus on how do you pursue growth opportunities? How do you reorient your business to be able to take advantage of things that are actually emerging and growing? And how do you do it fast? For the ones in the middle, it's really about adopting the operational side of your business to improve delivery and meet demand. What are the key challenges and how do you push forward with that? And then for the last one, this one is a bit more challenging because you actually need to redefine the core value proposition of your business. What is theater in this new reality? What is cinema in this new reality, etc.? And what is the business, and how do you make that into a sustainable business model? So in business school, this is a standard, let's say, design template for a business. It was developed by Oscar Osterwalder from Strategizer, and it's a very, very useful canvas for people who want to design or institutionalize their creative proposition. It has two parts. It has a supply part on the left and a demand part on the right. So if your business has been disrupted on the supply side on the left, on how do you supply your value to customers, then the key things is really just adapt and adjust. Adapt sourcing, your operational efficiency, the key partnerships that you have. It's about cost management and profit expectation adjustment. But if your business is disrupted fundamentally in the demand side, in its marketplace, then you really have to think about who you are serving. You have to really rethink your value proposition. Who are your real customers now? Have your customers changed? What is the value that you're giving them? What is the relationship and channel of delivery? And definitely, what is your source of revenue? So if your business is primarily supply disrupted, take a look at the left side of the business model canvas. And if your business is primarily demand disrupted, take a look at the right side of the business model canvas to reinvent. So just a final couple of slides on this. So spending some time in China, one of the favorite things that I picked up was this character on Wei Qi, which is about crisis. And it's popularly told that actually the two characters mean both danger and opportunity. That with every danger, there's actually an opportunity to take advantage of. So what I'd like to close is how one country used the crisis to redesign their whole economy. So in 1997, more or less 20 years ago, when the Asian financial crisis hit, South Korea was hit very hard because their economy was designed on cheap copycat manufacturing. They were copying everything Sony was doing and doing everything that the Japanese car manufacturers are doing, etc., etc., etc. And they were hit very hard because now China became the cheaper manufacturing copycat manufacturer than the Koreans. So their president, so it was all the way to the president, really called for a task force to redesign the Korean economy, and they drove it on two anchors, creativity and innovation. On the innovation side, they incentivized companies like Samsung, LG, etc., to move away from copycat manufacturing and to build capacity to innovate. And now they're among the biggest electronics and mobile phone companies in the world, and they beat Sony really squarely. In fact, they're not looking at Sony anymore on this one. And then on the other side, also in terms of content creativity, there is the Korean wave that was incentivized, that was structured, that was helped by the Korean Content Agency, which is a government agency that really pushed for a global market for Korean creativity in terms of content. So that's the sharing that I have for this morning. I'm really, when we redesign the businesses and when we institutionalize creativity, we need to do it in terms of the totality of the business design that is adaptive to the current disruption. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for that, Mr. Paolo. That was an amazing presentation. Ensuring that creative efforts live on to succeeding generations requires not just sustainable, but also a more permanent commitment from all angles, from all sectors, that not only galvanizes individuals, moves communities, but becomes embedded in legacy. Our fifth speaker worked in a wide range of creative sectors before representing the 4th District of Pangasinan. He was a marketing professional, a columnist, a magazine and newspaper editor, a theater director, and producer until he became a millennial congressman of the Philippines, working in the front lines to bring the creative industries their much-needed support. Let us all hear from Congressman Christopher de Venecia. Sir, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you're live, sir. Take it away.
Alright, thank you. Maayong buntag sa inyong tanan. Let me start by congratulating the Cebu Furniture Industries Foundation for organizing the Cebu Design Week 2020 and for providing leadership in your sector, which is much needed in this age of pandemic. Since its conception in 2018, you guys have been breaking a lot of ground, so kudos to all of you who worked hard for this event. I'd also like to acknowledge my fellow workers in government, of course, the DTI family headed by Secmon Lopez, ED Rhea Matute, and ED Pauline Juan, the NCCA family headed by Chair Nick Lizaso, as well as the LGUs of Cebu and Mandaue cities. Special shout out to Governor Tita Gwen Garcia, the Philippine National Commission for UNESCO, headed by USEC Ernie Abella, my dear colleague, Congresswoman Lollipop Owana Dizon, who has provided support to this event. Again, daghang salamat po sa inyong lahat. I feel honored for having been invited to a panel that includes leaders in the country's creative space. However, I am taking on the stage not as a lone wolf fighting for the creative industries in Congress, but as a representative of many of my colleagues who have heeded the call of the sector. At least 46 members of the House of Representatives are in solidarity with Cebu Design Week 2020, all of whom are members of the Arts and Culture and Creative Industries Bloc, or ACHIB, that was formed last year in the 18th Congress. What started as a handful of representatives has now ballooned into the growing family that we are now, all united to champion the causes of the totality of the creative economy. The Cebu Design Week was overwhelmingly supported among our ranks. This, I believe, is a testament to the Cebu Design Week brand, which, young as it is, has already tickled the curiosity and imagination of members of Congress. As excited as I am to be with you today, I must admit this morning's topic of quote-unquote institutionalizing creativity is particularly daunting to me. It involves two words that transport me to important phases of my life. Creativity, of course, has always been near and dear to my heart. Starting as a young actor, then becoming a writer and magazine and newspaper editor, and later on a director and producer for the stage, I think I wouldn't be faulted for claiming that I live and breathe creativity. I must have gotten it from my grandfather who started Sampaguita Pictures way back in the day. But the other word, institutionalization, takes me back to a not so distant past when I was taking up political science in Ateneo de Manila University. The concept of institutions is one that I encounter a lot these days as a public servant. To be honest, I have almost taken it for granted. However, this discussion has given me a reason to hit the books again and rediscover the significance of institutions in our society to somehow honor my undergraduate degree. One of the readings that I had in college dwells on the concept of institutions and defines it roughly as, and I quote, the rules of the game by which members of society act, behave, and respond. This is a widely used definition initially posted by the economist Douglas North in the early 90s. I know our block's resident economist, Congresswoman Stella Kimbo of Marikina, will be proud of me for quoting North. These rules of the game, according to him, may be formal or informal. Formal rules would include the country's codified laws, rules, and regulations that government creates and imposes. On the other hand, informal rules refer to more or less invisible codes of conduct, norms of behavior, etiquette, and the like. From this depiction, we are immediately made aware that institutionalizing a policy is not limited to the enactment of laws or the creation of legally binding documents within the formal parliamentary procedures of state. Rather, institutionalization involves activities to make a belief, school of thought, or policy legitimate, acceptable, and desirable among members of society through invisible forces such as norms and etiquettes, in short, culture. Institutionalization starts when legislators enact laws, but those laws have to be accepted by members of society who are affected by them, which can only be achieved through a gamut of means that affect our mindset and culture as citizens. Institutionalizing creativity, therefore, has to be a concerted effort among the government, the private sector, and civil society to first make pieces of legislation in the formal stage, followed by efforts to legitimate these laws among the people through informal channels outside the halls of Congress, such as in media and in our culture. This conceptual discussion is probably the best I have to offer to this panel's discussion, as it is, I really am the least qualified to talk about this topic, but because with me are personalities who have been institutionalizing creativity for a long time now. In fact, they themselves can be considered institutions in the creative industries, thanks to the contributions that they have made for a long time now. I mean, of course, we have Pauline Suaco-Juan, right? Legendary magazine editor and now executive director of SciTem, who most recently launched FamePlus.com, the online platform of the world-renowned Manila Fame exhibition. Pauline spent almost 15 years at the helm of the country's magazine publishing industry. Her appointment to the government sector was by itself an important step towards institutionalizing creativity in the country. Bridging the gap between the public and private sectors is essential to this endeavor, and Pauline has done so very much seamlessly. She carries the credibility that she built throughout her career in the private sector into the arena of public service. Government, to say the least, is very lucky to have her. Of course, there's also Paolo Mercado, who, after taking on magnanimous responsibilities in one of the biggest multinationals in the world, has taken on an even bigger role in civil society as the president and founder of the Creative Economy Council of the Philippines, or the CECP, our partner in consolidating the creative economy. Paolo's time and brilliance have redounded to the organization of the dispersed creative sectors. Tell you the truth, before any government agency was able to classify and cluster the country's creative industries, CACP was already there working with these stakeholders. For that and more, Paolo and the CECP has become our block's Polaris or North Star, and we're very, very grateful to him. Now we go to our homegrown heroes. Butch Carungay understands the institutional effects of signals and symbolisms. Now the Philippine National Consultant for the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, Butch has once said that Cebu's designation as a UNESCO Creative City of Design has given the Cebuano creatives a new rallying point and sense of belonging, a new brand even. Although a culture of creativity had very much existed prior to this recognition, Butch knew that institutionalizing creativity also meant deriving legitimacy and support from the international community, in the same way that it is important to continuously cultivate an artistic tradition domestically. Ms. Domi Chua, president of the Ramon Aboites Foundation, the Aboites family social responsibility arm, has helped institutionalize creativity within the island of Cebu and beyond. Rafi has actively taken on projects founded on the focus areas of microfinance and entrepreneurship, culture and heritage, education, leadership and citizenship, and integrated development. This strategic approach to impact multiple areas of community and societal life has contributed to the institutionalization of policies and practices within the creative sphere. I particularly admire how Rafi has pursued its goals even through this pandemic, promoting projects such as Tourism, which promotes a story-based tourism for towns in the new normal. And say it with me, everyone, tourism is not only destination, but it's also experience. Two, the Casa Gorordo Museum's webinar on the innovative art of soil painting, and the Gabii sa Kabilin's cosplay contest for kids. I mean, these are programs that attract and incentivize artistic creations among Cebuanos of all ages and sectors. And last but not the least, we must not forget our reason for being here, the Cebu Furniture Industries Foundation, represented by one of Cebu's finest furniture makers, Ms. Laurie Boquiren. As I hinted earlier, without the accolades and events such as the Cebu Design Week, I'm pretty sure that Cebu would still be one of the premier creative hubs of the country. But regularizing traditions reinforces these strengths and competitive advantages. And this is precisely what institutionalizing creativity is all about. I've been asked to share with you the vision of the 18th Congress for the country's arts, culture, and creative industries. To speak of a clear and specific vision, however, might be premature to do, given that we are still in the process of mapping out the sector, helping organize, as well as understanding their proclivities, challenges, and dreams. Besides, design thinking teaches us to be malleable in our vision and to set goals that can be revised, refined, or even removed whenever we encounter new ideas, new stories, and new perspectives. What I am prepared to share instead are principles that I think are essential to any vision that we may explore for the country's creative economy in the near future. I take inspiration from what I'm now calling the Cebuano model of creativity, using what else? The acronym CEBU. First, the vision should be C, cosmopolitan. A cosmopolitan view is that of having wide international sophistication. To achieve this, the country must open itself to, if not attract, creative inflow. You may be wondering, how can a vision for a Filipino creative industry be influenced by foreign standards? I am inspired, if not intrigued, by the story of Vasacraft's Company Inc., a furniture company that is owned by Swedish-American entrepreneurs located in the city of Lapu-Lapu. Vasacraft takes pride in its Swedish traditions of quality and heritage, but equally boasts of having highly skilled and creative Filipino artisans, whom they proudly refer to as partners. This to me is a success story of how foreign and Filipino can work side by side, resulting ultimately to the raising of standards of our Filipino artists and workers. We should not be afraid to intermingle with foreign creativity. In fact, we must embrace, albeit astutely, international influence and endeavor to match it by looking within and then honing our very own. Studies in psychology have shown that exposure to other cultures may increase the physiological arousal level of the individual, increase brain activity, and improve their attention level, thus contributing to creative tasks. In short, inspiration. Meeting international standards should likewise be in the pipeline of the creative economy agenda, especially if we are to expand our excellence and track record in the export of creative goods and creative services as evidenced by a recent UNCTAD report, which Paolo talked about earlier. In the film industry, for example, our directors and producers have shared with us their unfortunate experience of not meeting certain technical standards of online streaming platforms such as Netflix, primarily in the realm of sound quality, which has led to them receiving much less in licensing fees compared to counterparts, say, from Thailand, whose standards are already more exacting. There's also the matter of production, manufacturing, and logistics being cheaper elsewhere as compared to our country. Already, the cost of shipping alone is double the price of the creative good being sold. This must be addressed lest the creative goods sector never realizes its fullest potential. Indeed, achieving international standards for our creative industries will make economic sense, which brings me to the next principle. The vision must be E, economic. This principle reminds me of many enlightening encounters I've had with my mentor, Congresswoman Sharon Garin, who was always very kind in reminding me that government's resources are limited and must thus be strategically distributed towards our country's varying goals and policies. Many of our stakeholders from the various creative industries have requested tax breaks and exemptions both as a response to COVID and as a way to stimulate these industries towards development in the long run. In short, institutional. Their wish list also includes financial grants as a possible stimuli for the creative industries, especially during the time of recession. These requests are not without basis either. Films, for example, are 30% more costly to produce now in this pandemic, considering all the protocols that must be complied with. Imagine having to provide accommodation and doing locked in shoots for cast and crew, not to mention the swab kits that must be procured, all in order to produce an output that cannot even be enjoyed in their traditional distribution platforms, aka movie houses, in the foreseeable future. As natural as creativity arrives to artistic individuals, I am also reminded by the wisdom of former South Korean President Kim Dae-jung, the architect of South Korea's creative boom, who once quite forthrightly said, and I am paraphrasing here, that artists are economically weak, so the government must support them financially. However, governments must not intervene in creativity, for creativity must flow freely, and intervention kills the arts. E also stands for embedded in education. Artistry begins at an early age. Artisanship, for example, can start in a young boy or girl tinkering in his or her parents' wood workshop. It's the beauty of those first encounters, the sensory, instinctive, and philosophical titillation and creative awakening, as sustained both culturally and institutionally, that births our country's creative class. It is thus imperative that we invest heavily in our K 12 system to provide sustained and thoughtful interventions in support of our country's future artists and create platforms of continuation and honing in our higher and tertiary levels of education. But despite these formal and non-formal traditions, society continues to cling to a preference towards licensed professions and away from developing a career in the arts and creative industries. Nonetheless, hope springs eternal as I read through the stories of the graduates from the Fashion Institute of Design and Arts, or FIDA, Cebu campus. 2019 graduate Anna David, now a full-fledged fashion designer, shares that being a fashion designer has always been her lifelong dream, which would not have been possible if not for the institution that she enrolled at. Opportunities in arts education remain scarce as compared to those in other industries, and interested students still have to sort of seek out and dig deep for those opportunities. Education also naturally brings together people with similar passions, as Jules Gadingan shares. According to her, through FIDA, she was able to meet like-minded people who had the same passion for the art of fashion. This gave her the feeling of belongingness. Education also has that validating function, and the lack thereof produces the opposite, a void. Embedding the arts in our educational system must also include career pathing through the help of TESDA, DOLE, and the private sector, where graduates of arts courses are channeled into productive industries. The sustainability of the creative class should be at the forefront of our efforts. Members of Achieve are in close coordination with appropriate agencies for possible programs and pieces of legislation that would address this gap. The formidable challenge of arts promotion must approach with solutions that have strong basis in research, which is why the plan of action must be B, based on research, data, and experiences on the ground. For this, I take you again from another B, Butch Carungay, and his journey towards achieving the celebrated UNESCO Creative City of Design designation for Cebu. According to Butch, it took a lot of quantifying, inventory building, and statistics gathering and analysis to argue before the UNESCO Cebu's performance and potential as a creative city. Paolo Mercado and the CECP have also been doing their part in collating and projecting data forward on the industry's income employment, and competitiveness to help generate a better snapshot of the Philippine creative economy. And perhaps I'm also very much grateful for Achieve's partnership with DTI and through our constant back and forths with Rhea Matuten, Pauline Juan, and Karen Hipol, and even Undersecretary Fita Aldaba. And we are now in the process of creating a strategic roadmap for the creative industries and for the creative industries of the whole country through the help of USAID and also right shopping legislation with the help of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies to institutionalize a governance mechanism within the DTI to work together with the NCCA and other government agencies in order to provide leadership and support for the creative economy. We in Achieve try to contribute by gathering public and private stakeholders in a room together, or rather in a Zoom, collecting qualitative data on their experiences, planting the seeds for collaboration, and transposing these into congressional action, whether it's through filing a bill or amending an existing law, or even using our oversight powers to connect stakeholders with government programs. And of course, most recently, lobbying for more responsive budgets for our government agencies that sort of dabble in arts and culture as well as creative industries. It goes without saying that data and common experiences must inform, if not direct, the legislative agenda of the creative economy. And finally, the U in Cebu is ubiquitous. The creatives must exist everywhere and must involve everyone. I circle back to the story of CFIF and how a group exclusive to furniture industry players managed to be so accommodating and embracing to the other segments of the creative network in Cebu. The CFIF immediately recognized the shared goals and interests that the furniture industry has with other creative industries, put them all together, and created the CDW for all to enjoy and benefit from. Government solutions to creative sector woes must be informed by the commonalities that many industries share. For example, almost all creative industries have labor, trade, education related issues. There are also a number of sectors that have tourism related concerns. However, nuances also exist across the board, as what we have been finding out in our sectoral consultations. The formation of Achieve and the most recent creation of a special committee on the creative industry and performing arts in the lower house, which I was elected to chair, are small parts and parcel of the bigger picture of institutionalizing creativity in the country. However, I do feel that these developments are significant and represent a big pivot towards the right direction. It is our hope that in the coming days and months, our creative leaders in Cebu will continue to guide and inspire us in Congress as we draft, revise, and ultimately pass bills that will push the arts, culture, and creative industries forward. So that about sums up my message for you guys this morning. Thank you again, Ina and all the organizers for inviting me to participate in this forum. I'm looking forward to the Q&A later so we can maybe answer some questions from the audiences who are tuning in. Thank you, everyone, and good morning.
It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here. And it gives us an excited kind of hope to know that there are people like you who have been where we creatives are and who understands what we need for us to serve our country better. Now, the ACCIB, or the Arts and Culture and Creative Industries Bloc, headed by Congressman de Venecia, has contributed to support the creative communities and industries. We would like to enumerate these congressmen and congresswomen to acknowledge their commitment to institutionalizing creativity in the Philippines. And these are, their names are on your screen: Tof de Venecia, Kiko Benitez, Mikey Arroyo, Liandy Bolila, Ana Marie Villariza Suarez, Christine Singson, Chiquiting Salarbita, Rufus Rodriguez, Camille Villar, Vilma Santos Recto, Edward Maceda, Stella Kimbo, Ann Hoffer, Maria Lourdes T. Arroyo, Alfred Vargas, Coco Nograles, Dan Fernandez, Divi Savellano, Rufy Biazon, Lucy T. Gomez, Sherry Antan, Len Alonte, Lauren Legarda, Ria Vergara, Riada Robes, Cristal Bagatsing, Noy Defensor, Yul Servo Nieto, Evi Escudero, Baby Arenas, Sol Aragone, Joel Garcia, Ami Sancopan, Claudine and Diana Bautista, Apid de los Santos, Nika Ko, Joyta Bunting, Sharon Garin, Ronnie L. Ong, Javier Jesus Romualdo, Strike Revilla, and Geraldine Roman. So thank you so much. It is good to know that we have people in Congress who are looking at the creative industry and supporting the creatives there. Our next speaker was the editor-in-chief of Preview Magazine and Style Bible for 15 years. She helped elevate Filipino talents by sharing stories of the local artistry and industry alongside the world's cosmopolitan. Under her mentorship, young brands found their footing and are now thriving in their own right. Ubiquitous. Today, she's here as the executive director of the Center for the International Trade Expositions and Missions, CITEM. Let us hear from Ms. Pauline Suaco-Juan. Good morning, ma'am. Thank you for being here with us.
Good morning, Kay. Good morning to everyone. I would like to thank Cebu Design Week and the Cebu Furniture Industries Foundation for inviting me to today's event. I am very, very happy to share CITEM's ideas on how to incorporate creativity into our work and to have learned from today's conversation and presentation from the panelists. I would like to thank also Cong for that very eloquent description and recognition of what we've done for Fame Plus here at CITEM. Thank you for that on behalf of the company. And I'm excited to share this with our viewers today in Cebu Design Week. And it is an honor also to be surrounded by champions of the Philippine creative industry who are with me in today's panel. Today's topic may have already sprung questions in your mind. How do we institutionalize creativity? How do we fit into the boxes of systems and flowcharts the ideas and concepts that are meant to flow freely from the mind? We explored this question by looking at our work as the government's export promotions arm. Our mandate of promoting Philippine products to global markets is centered on the creativity of Filipino manufacturers, brands, and artisans. Today, I would like to talk specifically about Manila Fame, which, established in 1983, is the second longest running trade show for the home fashion lifestyle sector in Asia. The products we exhibit at Manila Fame are examples of craftsmanship and design excellence that the Philippines is known for. So Manila Fame is a creative platform that employs and works with a lot of designers, from our product design to our sets and to communication design, in the way we're able to promote our constituents to the world. And we do this to generate sales for the creative industry, the E in your Cebu, and to benefit our stakeholders who are creatives. They are your home fashion designers and manufacturers and brands, among others. So when we were looking to innovate on Manila Fame, we were doing so based on a background of digital disruption that had been happening globally and particularly through the retail industry. When the pandemic came about, we really had to think twice about the strategies that we put in and how to accelerate this. Anyway, so I will start with this quote that comes with Forbes. Most successful marketing strategies are built around content, period. It's not an add on or merely a component of a wider marketing plan. Content comes first and resonates in everything we do. So these words have never been truer in today's global situation, especially during this pandemic. So this quote has become the backbone of our strategic thrust in SITEM. Um, in the interest of time, I am just drilling down particularly on the strategic thrust, but as organizations go, you know that of course when you do this whole exercise, we start with company mandate, your mission, your vision, and so on and so forth until you get down to a strategy. So for the purposes of this presentation, I will skip the whole thing and go on to our strategy, which is content marketing. So, taking into consideration the pressing needs of our stakeholders and our mandate of export promotions, Saitem made a tactical decision to focus on content marketing. Content marketing, which is generally defined as engaging your target market to buy in through sales, offers answers to the question, how can I be discoverable online? And our answer for that question is to build an online home for the home, fashion, and lifestyle community. And here you have it. After 2 years of work with the pandemic in between, we have the homepage of Fame Plus. For those of you who are able, I encourage you to open a separate window and log on to fameplus.com. Or if you have an iPad or your iPhone beside you, you can type the URL Fame Plus as well. And you can explore the site while I go through the different features of the site. Our challenge is to make Fame Plus exhibitors and products discoverable to as many relevant people and audiences as possible. The reality today is that buyers have already Googled what they are going to buy even before they go to a show. So in 1983, when Saitem was first established, the only way buyers would know what was new or what is to physically be present at the trade show. But now they've already researched it, workshopped it, and done the necessary consultations with the marketing department. So we need to be at that. We need to be present and at that point when the buyer is still doing research. And so going digital will enable us to go beyond the who and where the trade shows reach and be available 24/7 all year round. So how will content and digital marketing work then? So on Fame Plus, we create content that will, number one, show a catalog of products from our exhibitors. Number two, tell the stories behind our brands, our companies, and their products. And number three, build a community of buyers, sellers, and stakeholders by creating special online events about business trends, business practices, market insights, and the like. So the catalog of products is the heart of Manila Fame. Or sorry, the heart of Fame Plus. And we came to this conclusion because of a Facebook campaign that we did early on in the when the quarantines were imposed. So we were distributing stories from the old touchpoint, which were the stories that we produced in the old website, and realized that buyers or the audience who were clicking on them were actually looking for products. So even if they heard the stories and were already interested, we needed to complete that journey for them. Hence, we had to redesign and engineer the contents of Fame Plus so that the catalog portion would receive a lot, would be able to accommodate a lot of data and be a prime pillar in terms of the website. So we also need to make our catalog creative and technical so that we can achieve quality scores in the search engines. So, how do we do this? When we say creative, we look for fantastic photos and stories. As a matter of fact, what we realized would be key when we launched the website is that we would try to get as many MSMEs and as many exhibitors on board by giving 100 companies content creation subsidy to be able to photograph and write descriptions of their products so that we could upload them and hence they could be Googleable. So, and that leads me to technical. By uploading content that has a good quality score, meaning you hit the right keywords, you will achieve a higher ranking on Google search and thus makes you more searchable online. The stories and features created by our editorial team will be housed in Touchpoint. This is the storytelling platform within Fame Plus. It is featured prominently in the website and will be updated for everyone to enjoy. So, by telling their stories through Touchpoint and producing strong, shareable content, we will be able to develop our audience and channel our promotions to buyers whose interest we aim to capture and convert to visits to Fame Plus. So we engaged a dedicated editorial team that will craft rich content to be distributed online. We also launched the content amelioration program for our exhibitor applicants, where Saitem will provide 100 companies with curated content for their digital storefront for free for 1 year. So content will be available, but we also encourage companies who have their own content to upload and be part of the product catalog. Content will be available in different formats, from stories on Touchpoint to real-time content that we redistribute on social media and even the messaging apps. The idea is to make content available to stakeholders when it's most convenient for them. The event section of Fame Plus is intended to build community and keep them engaged. And as per the commandments of digital marketing, the more your community is engaged, the more they use your site, the higher your ranking is on search. Therefore, the more discoverable you are to the rest of the world online. From now till the end of the year, and we call this our community building or acculturation phase, we aim to teach exhibitors, especially, how to use the site and make the most of their digital participation on Fame Plus. For example, on Friday, we have a town hall with some of the exhibitors who were part of the recent participation in MOM. So it will be learnings from them, from the exhibitors themselves, practical learnings like what are the hidden costs and so on and so forth, that we would like the entire community to learn from and benefit from. Further down the line, we have events for skills upgrading with the likes of Canva, WGSN, Facebook, and more. Another way of looking into institutionalizing creativity in Saitem is to create a structure around our creative endeavors. Pioneering a homegrown website that would bring Philippine design to global audiences can be daunting. There are many elements to put together, and we need to sync plans and ideas across different divisions so that we can move like clockwork. This is a new way of working for us. So we decided to systematize our operations and integrate creative output with the technological and logistical tasks involved in putting up Fame Plus. So we also did this because we realized that we needed to get the support staff to visualize the role that they played in the entire process. So let me share with you the systems design flowchart that we created for Fame Plus. So at the top of our system is creative direction, which will dictate how Fame Plus will be presented to its stakeholders. Placing the creative director at the top has been key to determining our deliverables and streamlining our processes. After building our website structure, we proceeded to identify the various operational components that we needed for the site. So, the first vertical that you see is infrastructure because, and really is about the web hosting, the domain name, and the other tech things. So I won't really dwell there. So the other one, the next one, which is exhibitor onboarding, is the vertical wherein we bring in content. So how we deal with the creatives. What you see here are the different contracts that we have. Amelia is our code name for those who are receiving the content subsidy. Non-Amelia is our group of exhibitors who are uploading their own content. And these, the circles down below, are the teams who are in charge of implementing them. Product development, which also benefits the exhibitors. We have instituted, if you would like to look at design commune within Fame Plus, now or later on, it shows the different product development efforts that we have made. Mind you, the product development of Fame Plus and Manila Fame is really conceived so that we have new products to sell on Fame and promote on Fame Plus and our physical trade shows. So aside from this, the Design Center of the Philippines also does extensive product development for stakeholders that need design help. The next vertical is the editorial team. So again, these ones in blue are the contracts that we have for, let's say, the editorial team that will come on board. Touchpoint was the old content from the old website that we migrated. And then Monet is the contract that we have for the community management. So these are big and small contracts, but you can see that the people and the departments responsible are clearly detailed there. So how the exhibitor vertical and the editorial vertical work together is that we hope that everything that gets featured on the exhibitor vertical um, is made into stories by the editorial team so that we can distribute them to our social channels and to direct marketing or direct email that we will be employing given the next vertical, which is the customer relationship management. This is Carmen is our code name for the people who are implementing the CRM. A CRM is basically a tool that you use to help in productivity and data gathering. But what tools like, let's say, email journey and social listening are at our disposal now so that we can use data to be able to distribute not just the products in the second vertical and the stories in the third vertical to an audience of buyers and like-minded individuals who are already interested in the products and stories that we carry. So the next vertical is digital events. And as I was saying earlier, these complement all the other verticals on this in this structure because the digital event builds community. So again, these are the different contracts that we have and the departments and people responsible for implementing it. So we have lifestyle events, workshops that focus on capacity building. Design Commune is a project that focuses on product development. So all of these are in place to build community. And why is community building so important? I would actually, dare I say, that community building is actually an act of patriotism in this case, because small and big companies alike, when they are in a community building platform, are able to leverage off each other's networks so that you can get more people into the site and to explore more everybody who is registered and has a digital storefront and or story within the site. So our last vertical is the overseas trade fair participation. So right now we have current projects with PHX Tokyo. We just recently concluded our MOM, Maison Objet en Mode, digital participation, and ITIM, which is a summary of the participation we would have shown in Fure Salone in Milan. So all of these can be seen in the website. We are excited to build a stage that breaks the limits of space and time for Philippine design. So we hope that as you visit fameplus.com, you will have a better appreciation of how creativity contributes to the success of our agency. My talk today is just one suggestion of how organizations can institutionalize creativity. We have five panelists today who were all brimming with ideas, and I am eager to begin talking to them in the panel and to listen to the question and answer portion as well. So, but before I end, let me just pull up our social sites. If you have additional questions, we are reachable on the following channels. And as a parting gift, we got a little creative with our IG filters. So if you scan the QR code, you will be able to see, or you can play this little game with us, post it on your Instagram field, and see which Fame Plus product is exactly your match. So in other words, if you were a chair, what Fame Plus chair would you be? So good morning, everyone, and thank you. It was indeed a pleasure to be here with you in Cebu Design Week.
Thank you so much for that, Miss Pauline. That was both invigorating and inspiring. Now, we have a lot of work to do, but the initiatives of bigger institutions potentially makes this work for us, if not lighter, then more interesting and invigorating, as there are people on the other side of the jump ready to catch us. Community building as a form of nation building indeed. Now, we are going to go right to our panel discussion. So all the questions that you have been hanging on to, our team has been collating them as you've been sending them in. We accept questions from the floor. If you still have more questions, send them in. Now, to bake in all the insights from the 6 amazing presentations we just saw, and to guide the flow of the panel discussion, I'm going to call back on stage Ms. Pauline Suaco-Juan, our moderator, and I invite all the speakers to turn on their video and turn on their audio. We will begin the panel discussion. Ms.
Thanks,
Pauline?
Kay. How long do we have for the panel discussion?
We have about 30 to 40 minutes.
Okay.
There are a lot of questions, so
I know there's
right ahead. Yeah, I think a lot of people got really, fired up. So
yeah. Let me start first. Of course, let's start with the macro first and go into institutionalizing creativity. But I wanted to address my first question to and first talk about institutionalizing the creative institutions with Paolo, Cong, and Butch. Obviously, you work with other institutions who have to institutionalize their creatives, right? How do you plan this in terms of timelines? Because Butch clearly mentioned that it isn't, it is for the long run. And all the things that the three of you are doing, for example, are not something that can be achievable in 1 year's time. So when you have to think that far in advance, how do you design the big picture and then the smaller picture so that it can be implemented, and then eventually you keep the markers in terms of your timeline, and then you achieve the goal in the long run? So let's start with Butch.
Okay, that's a tough one. Hey guys, again. Okay, so when I was going through this process and I was really trying to figure out, okay, what are the hallmarks of institutionalized creativity? One of the milestones really was that it should not it's independent of political cycles, and it should exist on its own and flourish. But we also understand, there are existing structures in place. And I know there are a lot of efforts that are still being reconciled in terms of who's going to be doing this, who's going to be doing that. I'm not sure about there was talk about a Department of Culture that was being debated on the floor, but I don't know where that's going. But what we're doing in Cebu, at least from our context, is really try to do more the bottoms up approach, and wait for the top down and then tweak our plans along the way. Although we do already work with government agencies like DTI, who have had the same personalities for quite a long time. So they've been instrumental in actually getting us to in initiating the bidding process in the beginning, and now we're working on, okay, how do we take that forward? So we're doing it from our side, and then we'll just wait for how, if there are new directives, if there's we can obviously influence, like the mapping. I'm very excited about, because that's something that we really need. And again, data is paramount to all the efforts that we do. So we localize our interventions and then reconcile along the way.
So it's, in terms of timeline, though, it's you kind of adjust.
Yes, but we have our internal targets. Okay. But then if something changes, and of course we will be versatile and adapt, because that's the reality of it all.
All right, Paolo, would you like to weigh in?
Yes, I'll start with the most challenging one, but I believe to be the most important, which is the establishment of a creative economy agency as an official arm of the government. I will start with that. And the reason for that is, if you take a look at Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, or South Korea, etc., there is a lead agency for growing the creative economy. I would have to say that this is different from a culture and arts agency, which we already have. The NCCA is a culture and arts agency. You can elevate it to a department, but if its mandate remains fundamentally the same, it will be significant but incomplete. Where is it incomplete? Because if culture and arts at the core is identity building as Philippine culture, preservation, promotion, etc., which is important. But then it does not include innovation. It does not include creative services, which we do for foreign brands, for foreign titles, etc. And also the development of creativity as a skill, not cultural appreciation, but creative skills, which essentially are 4IR skills, Fourth Industrial Revolution skills. Now, the other countries have really put a lot of emphasis and funding. So Malaysia itself, their My Creative Agency, when they established it in 2012, so they have 8 years head start to us, they put in the equivalent of 2 billion pesos or 50 million as a fund, as a startup fund for creative industry. So this is serious effort. Now, I've been begging, pushing, and collaborating with TOC that can we get this as a legislative agenda to be passed before the end of the current administration in 2022. So it's a goal. It's a very concrete goal. Now, waiting for that, what is accessible right now, and Cebu and Baguio have both shown their examples of this. Local governments can institutionalize their own creative economy councils and creative industries or creative and cultural industry policies for the improvement of their city at a local. There is nothing stopping the local cities from doing that. And that's why part of the CECP agenda is to encourage other cities to aspire towards the UNESCO accreditation. Actually, you don't need the UNESCO accreditation. It's just there to help put a badge. In Indonesia, for example, which only has two UNESCO creative cities, they actually have their own local Indonesian creative cities network, which has multiple cities, and they help each other in embracing creativity as a source. So if I were to put it as an institutional target, it's that if we can get towards a creative economy agency by 2022, that would really be fantastic.
Kong Toff, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, I mean, just jumping off from what Paolo already mentioned, something that we really have to institutionalize in the last 2 years of the administration, and while the block is still around, is really a governance framework for the creative economy. So this is something that I've been making Colette Yusek Fita Aldaba about, and thankfully the Colette has translated into action. And so I think the DTI, through her efforts, was able to tap US aid to work with Paolo and I believe the PIDS and NEDA to come up with like a creative economy mapping for the Philippines. I mean, Cebu has done that successfully for the region, but we also need a national creative industry mapping. And then also as part of the output is to um, write shop a bill or a piece of legislation that we can advance in Congress to create a governance mechanism, like I said in my message earlier, within the DTI that will primarily cater to the creative industries. Now, simultaneous to that, our efforts also to revise the charter of the NCCA, which we've already filed as a block in Congress, and we're ready for it to be tackled in the Committee of Basic Education and Culture, which is headed by our fellow member, Chairman Roman Romulo. Because the charter of NCCA seems a little bit outdated, and it needs a little bit of sort of an overhaul so that it can relax into the creative economy experience. Not necessarily provide the leadership, but at least provide support that essentially that mechanism within DTI will take the lead on. And we have actually, we have a gamut of measures that we've already filed, some of which are, oversight of existing laws, like, the tropical fiber law, which requires that 20% of government uniforms be sourced from local textiles. This will be of great support to our textile industry. Cong Stella Kimbo is also drafting an oversight legislation so we can look into the anti-competitive logistics costs in the country. And this was primarily propelled by uh, an online consultation that we had with the fashion industry and the furniture industry, by which I believe Rita Neri shared that the price of shipping her order alone is like twice the cost of what she was selling. So these are essentially the bottlenecks and the pain points in the value chain of the creative goods sector, which when Paolo first presented it to us, we were lagging behind as compared to our ASEAN neighbors. And through these consultations we've sort of identified the reasons why. And so we will be looking into these little segments of the overall value chains of these creative sectors, and then also going for like the 2 or 3 key legislation per sector that we will advance as a block. Uh, and I think in terms of institutionalizing, when we sort of started working with the creative sector, particularly with the live events and film sectors through FDCP also and Chairman Liza Dino, uh, it was sort of like when we started like really doubling down and looking into this particular growth area for our economy. And between April and October, when the special committee was constituted in the lower house, it took about like what 4 or 5 months until some kind of institutionalization happened. So going back to your question, Pauline, of timeline, for me, regardless of who is seated in the position of speaker or who are the members of Congress who are present, at least now there's a special committee who whose primary mandate is really to cater to the promotion and development of the creative economy. So that's already a legacy that can be left behind by the 18th Congress, regardless of whether I'm there or not. So we're very excited about that, and we just have to keep pushing for these institutional amendments to the governance and for the governance structures and the bureaucracy, so that we can really grow this sector of our creative sector of our economy.
Thank you, Kong Toff. I would like to direct the next questions to Domi and Laurie. So from, from the institution, larger institution, I noticed in your presentations that you relied on, among other things, that you relied on digital technology to be able to cope with the pandemic. So, like a creative pandemic response for the two of you with regards to your stakeholders involves the use of, let's say, social and digital communication, from something as simple as WhatsApp and your chat groups, for example, or the chat groups of CFIP. Uh,
Yes.
CFIF, I'm so sorry. Um, and the, let's say, the learning on demand that Domi has, which she calls her Netflix of training modules, and her Community Tech Hub, which basically is uh, a learning to help the digitally challenged with, especially in the grassroots. So how difficult has it been to get your stakeholders to use the new technology? Well, not necessarily new, but technology, in order to build. In order to further your agenda and to build your community.
I would just
Uh,
like to defer first to Laurie.
mhm.
Laurie, maybe
Okay.
you start. In my case, I will. Yeah, I'll just follow.
Okay. Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yeah.
me? Do I?
Yes.
Okay. That's a very good question, Pauline, because in our industry alone, despite of the fact that we've been here for many, many years and we are several generations of furniture makers, the biggest challenge is not everybody is open to the digital era. Um, they're all challenged when it comes to new technology and new processes in the digital platform. That's the reason why we created Cebu Design Week to bring in a digital platform for some of our members and many of the creatives in the Cebu ecosystem. The thing is, they still have to they have to accept the fact that nobody travels. None of our buyers can travel in to talk to them personally and touch all these swatches and finishes and furniture that we are making. We all have to adapt to this big change of talking to our buyers by a digital platform, which is either by Zoom, by WhatsApp, or whatever we have. That's the difficult part of it. We are so tactile. We have to touch. The buyers need to touch to see everything that we do. So it's more challenging for us. So whether we like it or not, we have to learn all of these new things, and we need also to tell or influence many of our members who are still, if I may say, many of them do not even have a decent website up to now. So when the pandemic hit, that is what I'm saying. There's so much lack and absence of a digital platform. So when the pandemic hit and nobody can travel and everybody is there at home, they cannot even create content to send out to their customers. So we would like to, that is the reason why in CFIF we are coming up with all these table talk series, Pauline. We started with, Kenneth started and his team started with one very good one last month, and it was very, very well received. And it's something like, putting up your merchandise. You don't have to go on location to do a good photo shoot. You can do it inside your showrooms, inside your areas, your home, as long and it was thought very well by a very versatile and very knowledgeable business manager of Kenneth in his generously sharing his time with us. So we're going to be coming up with all this, but we do acknowledge the fact that many of us are technically challenged. And like it or not, the Cebu Furniture Industries Foundation has maturing members who are maturing members that are not very open to digital changes and new norms. And I welcome the what Rafi is doing, influencing the youth and coming up just to connect this Domi. I was so excited seeing those tech hubs that you are doing, because this can help us very much. There are young aspirants or young budding designers probably in schools that do not have any access to good computers. So what you're doing would also benefit the creative industry and will also benefit CFIF in the long run. Hopefully we can continue this. And right now, the problem is there is not much computer network for the students. That's the reality of it. That's the most difficult part of it right now. They cannot access, many of them don't have the access to a good computer at all.
Yeah.
So how can we teach them? Yeah. So we will need your help there, Domi. If we could combine our resources.
Actually, that was the reason, Laurie, that we really, designed something that is really intended for those who cannot have that access and you cannot afford, in fact, to buy all this gadgets. Yeah. And then at the same time, we know how the education department are not prepared about it. So I guess that's a large story why we have to do that. And not only that, and I was telling everybody that, our clients in our microfinance are generally micro entrepreneurs. And you cannot touch base with them. You cannot let them learn about processed food or training about a certain skill. You cannot do that, because it's bawal. So what is the best way is really to come up with this tech hub where they can go and really they can also get training, from whoever is there and provide them that opportunity as well to be trained on digital literacy and then at the same time to be trained on other skills. So that's what is the intention, of this community at CAB. Okay, so I guess, as far as we are concerned in the organization in RAFI is that because our market is really the grassroots, we are really providing, them that particular opportunity where the others, like us, you can have those opportunities to get those, training program. But sadly, sometimes, it's really the kind of support that we also need from the local government, because the local government really needs to support us by providing us where to put that, because our plan is really to put it in a clustered area so that everybody can really be accommodated. And then there is a way as well for us really to be, we have the mechanism, we have the design, we have the mechanics, how to do that. So I guess that's what we really need to do, as far as we're concerned in the organization, because this is the grassroots. I mean, majority of our population, is in the grassroots. So, but then before really proceeding to my other, to the other thing is that I was just so, and I a little bit disappointed because the list that Congressman De Venecia gave doesn't have the a congressman coming from Cebu. And we're supposed to be the creative city. And Congressman, could you please invite some of the younger generation to be your, because I love the way you're so passionate about it. How would I wish, that our congressman will be there, really to understand, to learn about this, so that it will be very easy for them to provide BISAG support. Because I know your role in the government is really to create the policy, enabling policy, okay? And then later on, the programs can just be done by the different, stakeholders like us, like the CFI, and then sila boots. There's so many who can do that. But I love what you said, Congressman, that it has to be embedded in the education. It really has to be embedded even at the school level, because
Yes. Yeah.
definitely this is not just about arts. Creativity is more than just art. Okay, it's more about
Yes.
it's also our culture. This speaks about our identity of who we are, as not just Cebuano, but as well as also Filipinos. So this is our identity. This is our descriptor. We need to be proud of who we are, but at the same time, to be embracing as well what the others have, because that's the only way for us to grow and sustain, that identity that we have. So I believe that this is the entire stakeholders. That's why I said it's always we, because it's we, it's not you, it's we. We really need to work together. And this is what Butch and the team has been doing. In fact, I was telling Butch, why are you including me? I'm not supposed to be there. I'm not a creative. No, Domi. Creativity is not just about art. It's not about furnitures. It's really about what you think, what you do there in your organization, which is really true. So I think,
Yes, Miss.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really, for me, it's everybody, all of us.
Just to build on what you were saying, Domi, about identity, we have a question from Marie Booth, actually. It's addressed to Paolo, but I would like the others to weigh in if possible. Paolo, yesterday, one of our speakers raised the issue of a need for a Filipino brand to help our creative sectors. What do you think about this, and how would we go about developing a unique Filipino brand?
Yeah, that's very tricky because there are 2 points to it. If it's really about literally one Filipino brand to promote Filipino creativity, I don't think that will be very effective. Because then is it like is it like one monolithic brand for every sector that you have? What really often is the best practice is to develop brands that are world class that happen to be Filipino. And I do see brands in the multiple in its multiplicity, because you cannot have one single brand that covers, let's say, furniture or furniture design and also movies at the same time. I'm just exaggerating the two on that. So you really do need to have a view of developing multiple brands and then ensure that these brands, one, understand the global market, to understand the standards of the global market, that there's a minimum standard in order to play, and then develop your own unique voice in how you develop your own products and services for the global market. What I now, countries like Denmark and Sweden, what they have developed is not a singular. They have developed a, let's say, a Danish way or a Swedish way of doing things, and that sets like, it's not a brand, but it's more like a brand equity or brand character. That the design is very Swedish or the design is very Japanese, etc. So I think that's helpful, but rather than force it, I do think that should come organically over time, because I think we're still at a very early stage of really saying that this is Filipino design or this is not Filipino design. I think we should just play in the global market, find our way, learn the standards, exceed and surprise the market, and then we'll find our own voice.
Yeah, I actually find that when like we have to promote the Philippines, right? So I think a lot of people confuse the branding or a marketing campaign or a slogan with a country branding, because it's very, as you said, it's disparate sectors. So it's very difficult to unite them under one particular brand if you go by what branding is in terms of a marketing definition, right? But to put them under a collective umbrella, let's say of Cool Japan, or in our case, if it's Cool Philippines, then I think that that kind of works, right? But to make sure that each and every sector carries one particular rigid definition in terms of brand, then I agree with you that it isn't particularly feasible. Laurie wanted to say something.
No, I was just saying that in the furniture industry, we are known, the Philippine brand is very well known to our buyers. When you see a furniture, you will immediately know that this probably came from the Philippines because of the intricacy of the material manipulation. Nobody can do that in the region except us. Vietnam will shy away from that, neither and as well as China, because it's so meticulously done and there's too many steps in doing it. There's something like a hidden Cebu brand in High Point. They already know where to go when a particular material or particular look they're looking for. They don't go to Vietnam, they don't go to China, they go to Cebu mostly because if I may say, I think we do have more export output in Cebu than Manila in terms of furniture. We cater to the export market, especially the US in Cebu than Manila, whereas conversely, Manila is catering to a lot of local markets. We have many manufacturers and exporters here that are really catering to the US market. And there's certain Cebu look. There's a certain, with the materials, the local materials that we are using that is very unique to us.
Yeah, you're right. You're right, because we are made of different cultures. Like for instance,
Yes, yeah.
the indigenous, let's say, weaving, clothing that we have. We have different patterns. You have the ivatans. You have different patterns. You have the hablon, hinablon. You have the one in Mindanao. You know, it's different. So, but these are Filipinos, and so we're made of different, so many cultures. We even have so many dialects, many of those, but there is something that you really can recognize. Okay, I can really attest to that. When I saw that movie of J Lo, where he was, I think, a maid, I said that's a Filipino basket that he was, she was carrying, and a bag. It should not be Africa. It should not be Indonesia. Why? It's because my son was asking me why. No, it's really, look at that, how it really appears. It's really something like, to me, it's really the one of Samar. This items coming from Samar, because they have the best really in terms of that weaving bags. So, which is really true. I really researched. It was really true. So I guess there is, and us as Filipino, we're so proud to see and to really look at our own, which is you're really right, Laurie. I've been in some hotels in other countries. We really can see, this is Filipino.
May I just add to the discussion? I think that's going to reconcile both frames of thought. While I agree with Paolo that it's still too early for us to actually get to a country branding phase, which some countries have kind of reached. So what's more feasible at this point is do industry level branding. So furniture from the Philippines, fabric of the Philippines, and this has been done in other countries, like shoes from Spain, chocolates from Switzerland. So, and they kind of follow like an Intel Inside co-branding model. So the individual brands will have their own, but then it will have that badge that, Philippine made, or, made in Japan. La, la, la. So I think that makes much more sense for now.
Yeah, like a seal, no?
Yeah.
Actually, if I could add, Pauline, very, very quickly lang, sorry. Since, I mean, how I understood the question was sort of like what you said about how Japan has like a cool Japan strategy. And again, this was propelled by our discussion with the DFA, because initially, when you're talking to them about the cultural diplomacy programs of our different foreign service posts, parang it seemed to me like sort of like a mixed bag, no? Parang depending on the proclivities of the sitting ambassador, then they will, pursue cultural diplomacy programs that are more rooted in film or in food or in fashion or whatever it is. But then, of course, we have very scarce resources, and of course, DFA is one of the most underfunded agencies. So, to be more efficient with the use of resources, we thought that it would be better if there was some kind of like master plan as to how to communicate our soft power to the rest of the world. And that's where Paolo sort of mentioned Cool Japan and the strategy of METI to us. And so that's something that we're sort of pursuing with the DFA right now with the Office of USEC Ernie Abelia. prior to even touching base with them earlier this year, they'd already been doing consultations with the different sectors of the creative industries on their end. And they one of the findings from that forum that they organized is that we do need a national brand. So what we're sort of doing right now in the budget season is also lobbying so that the Office of Strategic Communications and Research, or OSCAR, of the DFA will get the funding for a more extensive brand building activity in partnership with the different government agencies, so that at least we sort of have like a rallying cry for the different government agencies to sort of streamline all of their programs and limited resources too. Because if everybody's pursuing their own thing, then it's not as effective as if everybody sort of votes in together as one. So yeah, so that's on the subject of branding, and hopefully again, when the final version of the budget makes it all the way to the president's desk for signature, that the DFA will get the funding that they deserve, as well as the UNESCO National Commission of the Philippines, which should be providing programs and services to both Cebu and Baguio. So that's something that we're also making tutok with in the block. So crossing our fingers for that. Yeah.
We have the last question now before we end, and I'd like to address this to anyone on the panel. How do we ensure that the development of creativity in the Philippines is not limited to the elite level of society and reaches all socioeconomic levels? Paolo, I see you were going to answer this. Supposed to answer this live, Paolo, and then Butch.
Yeah. Yes. It has to do with education and access. So it's part of the creative economy strategy. That the creative education, first of all, has to penetrate basic education at a public school level. And this is not just about culture and arts appreciation. This is really bringing in creative skills. From child level design thinking to creative problem solving to things like that, which in many countries, in fact, are being driven at a basic education level. So we need that first level of reform. The second one is to maximize the opportunity of the TESDA framework. That after you graduate K to 12, that you can have a job readiness, create a creative job readiness acceleration program that gets a high school graduate from high school, fresh from high school into employability within 10 months. And then to be very selective, whether it's in graphic design or animation or other sectors, that we need those platforms to be able to pipeline the jobs that are growing in demand. I mentioned the freelancers, for example, on digital and the growing need for e-commerce content as well. We need some acceleration programs there as well. Now, of course, access is a combination of both technology and affordability. The affordability, that's where public policy comes in. To make these programs available through public schools and to test the I forget what you call it, not coupons, what do you call this, the test incentives for the students themselves, and accessibility, because a lot of these should be delivered online, or you can scale it faster online. Because then one teacher is not limited to one classroom, that one teacher can broadcast to a lot of classrooms, teaching in Filipino or local dialects, but access to online platforms, online learning platforms will need to be delivered as well. So that's my view of the key things to make sure that it reaches as broad as possible.
Okay, thank you, Paula. Butch, go ahead.
Two things. One, I completely agree with Paolo. But just want to add on access. I really think that the internet now is, or connectivity, broadband, is not a luxury, it's a necessity. So one thing that we're trying to advocate for is to pilot a smart city project here that I think Baguio is also doing. So that's with the DICT. So to really give free internet access to all. Because that's something that really needs to be addressed. The other thing that I think we haven't really touched on is we also need to recognize the fact that a lot of creatives or a lot of or cultural workers are in non-traditional business models. So they may be freelancers. They may be their arrangement may be intermittent. They may be contractual. So it's not the traditional way of how government sees MSMEs. So because of that, they do not have access to a lot of the social services. They cannot get amelioration programs and the like. But I think Paolo mentioned this earlier that the crisis has also accelerated these changes. So these models are also evolving. So I think that they need to be mapped and understood better, and how the crisis is changing the composition of MSMEs. And we need to look at how current mechanisms need to be tweaked or enhanced, so we're able to really allow them access to the full range of government services that really they should be entitled to. That's
Yeah, so I mean, in connection with that, in the committee level, in the Committee on Labor and Employment, we already have a freelance protection bill that I filed, and it's being considered alongside several other measures by Congressman Joey Salceda and the gentleman from SIBAC party list, where we do want to ensure minimum sort of standards of protection for our creative workforce, particularly with regards to contract and it being enforced, because it's always being taken for granted, or freelancers are being taken on for a ride. The services have been provided, but they still haven't gotten paid like more than 6 months to sometimes even years after. And we also want to be able to institutionalize some kind of support mechanism by which there would be a redress of grievances if these contracts are violated. The challenge, though, is like within the DOLE framework, they primarily cater to formal employees, and so we're sort of still figuring out where might this mechanism be established, whether it's within DTI. Whether it's within DTI or DOLE or whatever other government agency. And I think what's also important is to instill financial literacy in our creative workforce. So that's also sort of like a salient feature of the bill, as well as just letting them know like what rights are available to them. Obviously, in the creative classes pursuit of their craft, sometimes like all the legalese and the familiarity with all these laws and government programs that they should be able to access sort of blows over their heads. So that's something that we do want to actively pursue through this bill. And also, ever since the start of the pandemic, since the NCCA was mandated to provide social amelioration to the creative workforce, it was sort of that realization that all these years that they've been around, there has not been a proper database of workers from the creative class or creative economy. The FDCP for the film workers has started this already just a few years back under Chairman Liza Dino, but within the NCCA itself, when they had budgets that they had to disperse of in providing financial assistance, each national committee had to roll out surveys so that people can sign up and qualify for this social amelioration. So even in the building of the database of creative workers, this is something that NCCA is already doing, as brought about by the pandemic, and we're sort of working alongside them and the DOLE, especially in the implementation of the Cash for Work programs, that are enshrined in the Bayanihan 2 law, which we passed and was signed by the president. So this is something that we're also collaborating on with various creative sectors, so they can devise cash for work programs that are more tailored to the competencies of the creative workers, as opposed to cleaning their homes, taking a photo of the home before when it's disheveled, and then taking another photo when it's been cleaned and sending this all to Dole. I mean, it seems like it seems to be at the service of their skill sets and competencies. And certainly, there's so many areas of governance now where we need the skill sets and the competencies of the creative class. From the online learning within DepEd to even tapping the visual arts community, for example, and creating small scale interventions that sort of speak to the built heritage, as was shared earlier. So we're collating all of these suggestions from the creative sectors so that we can sort of properly guide Dole in implementing this cash for work. And it's it'll go a long way in supporting the displaced freelancers, especially during this pandemic.
Thank you, Kong Tof. On our chat box, there is a request from Music Abella who wants to add something to what Kong Tof originally said. So we will go to Music Abella. Afterwards, I will turn over to Kay, right? So Kay will start asking question. But is Music Abella here?
Yeah, someone needs to turn on his mic though. There.
Hello.
Can I be heard?
Yeah, you're
all
live.
right. Well, talk about serendipity. I just got in and then I heard, I just came into, just about the beginning of Kong Top's sharing. Anyway, first, I just wanted to say this, that, Cebu, of course, going to our capacities and skills. Obviously, there's an amazing depth of creativity and energy coming from both Baguio and Cebu, and for that reason, they have been designated as creative cities. And of course, we want to be able to spread that around. But there's about two things I believe that kind of concerns me, and that is it's basically about branding, which you already set up. What exactly do we want to be known for? If that could be determined by this group, for example, and the other partners, the other allies, what could we be known for? Germany is engineering, Italy is food, and Japan is craft. Unfortunately, unfortunately, we do have a brand. Philippines has a brand, and that's domestic service, and that we're able to provide service and all kinds of service. We're excellent along that line, but along the lines of creativity, what is it exactly that we want to push? And so I would like to leave that with you, because once we are able to really get that, then we can come around and come up and bring together the message. First the brand and then the story. What is it basically that we want to say, and then I believe the saying of the telling of it will take care of itself. So is it the craft? Is it the food? Is it the design? We are a creative people, but what exactly do we want to push? That's one. I mean, I'm talking in terms of strategic messaging. Secondly, I just like to share an insight about Israel itself. Israel they've already branded themselves as the innovation nation, no? For the plain and simple reason that they're not capable of scaling up. They don't have the manufacturing wherewithal. They cannot manufacture for the rest. Not like China, for example, that is the manufacturer of the world, quote unquote. So basically, that I believe is, first we need to be able to come together and find out. This is where I'm coming from. Okay, talking as Stratcom, talking strategic communications. What is our basic skill? What is our basic product? What do we want to sell? And secondly, maybe just if we could come together and focus and say, this is what we can do, this is what we will do and what we can do. That's about it. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. It can be so overwhelming talking about this on a national level. I just like to close by bringing it to a more domestic level here in Cebu, because what we were all asking was actually what we asked back in 2015. Because back in 2015, the Southeast Asian Creative Cities Network came together, and what we call the second cities of each Southeast Asian country came together and discussed what we were creative at, right? And DTI put together a small committee of various players from different sectors. There's furniture, architecture, there was Baxia from architecture, visual arts, theater as well, and talked about, okay, so what can we say Cebu is good at? Because it feels like we're good at everything, but nothing at the same, not quite nothing, but like what? What is it? Bandung talked about how they were the creative city of industrial design because they focused on how they, of their batik manufacturing and the various ways that they innovated on it. Georgetown and Penang called themselves the second city of heritage because of how they preserved Georgetown in its entirety, right? And we said, okay, so what is Cebu all about? Chiang Mai talked about how they were the creative city of craft because they have so many small crafters doing their own thing, putting up their own. So we go, Cebu is good at a lot of stuff, but how can we articulate it? You know, sometimes you don't see your own nose, but it's right in front, it's right in the middle of your face. And so we looked at ourselves, Cebuanos, and we said, okay, so what are we good at? We are creative, but at what? And we realized that we were creative entrepreneurs, whether as individuals, whether as using our own skills to create businesses out of it. Because primarily Cebuano wants to survive. And they can get pretty inspired in the means that they are surviving. So we said, well, we have to consider ourselves as creative entrepreneurs. And in this way, it became an informal sort of brand. And in this way, it sort of became a rallying cry for creatives in Cebu and people who want to survive in Cebu creatively. And I think it manifested physically in shops, for example, small crafter shops, bazaars held by big institutions, but also in small gatherings. We had a talk with Mark Deutsch yesterday, and he's a visual artist who gathers other visual artists and artists of all disciplines into his whole small garage so they could continue doing pocket, say, urban acupuncture, as Butch mentioned earlier, pocket events that could make creative activity ubiquitous so that the more it's done, the more other people are inspired by it. Or if you're a Cebuano, not quite inspired, more like, I can do that better, and create more initiatives that build up on a very friendly, competitive atmosphere, I would like to say. So we have actually so many questions. And this is a good thing because I feel that it's inspired so many people watching this. And I would like to tell everyone who couldn't catch this morning session that everything will be uploaded this Friday on CDW's YouTube and Facebook channels. So look out for that. And you can watch all of the presentations again. If you've got, and we've collected all your questions. And what we're going to do is we're going to send them, especially if you directed them to a specific speaker. We will send them to the speakers so they can answer at leisure. And we will be posting it as part of our follow-through content for Cebu Design Week. And you can see more insights from these people that you've mentioned. So I would like to thank everyone. Oh, yes, Mr. Paolo.
Okay, permission for one last comment. So,
go right ahead, please.
Yes, so I do recognize the need to defining brand equity, to really define the characteristics that make us unique. And I offer this not as an answer, but clues that I've observed from various sectors. One of them is from the animators, the Filipino animators at Disney, who have said the same thing as the Filipino Broadway performers, that what the Filipino is good at is emotive expression. Whether it is laughter, joy, heartache, heartbreak, etc., the Filipino does it better. That's why the Filipino animators in Disney are relied on for that expression. I think adding things like resiliency, as you mentioned, entrepreneurial resiliency, or the meticulousness that was mentioned by Laurie, I think that is the starting point of developing such a brand equity exercise. So I just wanted to just add that on, that there are elements that are there that we can build on. Yeah.
That's actually very true. And what the USEC Abelia said earlier about how domestic help seems to be and it's a noble work, by the way, seems to be the brand of Filipinos. I feel like there are Filipinos everywhere. It's just a matter of recognizing our own through, say, emotive design and animation. Tresa will be coming out in Netflix. So pick out works that are championed by or headed by Filipinos all over the world. And support it. Watch it. Put your money into it. And you will realize that there are Filipinos all over in creative industries all over the world. We just are not so good at recognizing each other. But I think this is where we should do that. And by and by, our story will be clearer. We'll be carving out our story from that. So, oh my God, I'm getting goosebumps. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for this panel. Thank you for being with us today and sharing your time with us. This has been Rethinking Tomorrow, Institutionalizing Creativity. And I hope everyone will walk away out to lunch, fired up as much as I am. All right? We're going to have an afternoon session which starts at 2 p.m. And don't forget to check out and submit your entries for the Blue Mango Awards. This by Mr. Butch Carungay. Okay? There's about 200,000 pesos prize money and various categories for this. So translate your stories to craft and get making. All right? There are various categories for it, as you mentioned earlier, and everyone can join in the fun. Okay, the last session for Design Summit is this afternoon, and we will hear from
Kay, you're muted.
Sorry. Okay, wait. You lost me. Okay. Thank you so much. This has been Institutionalizing Creativity. I hope you learned as much as I did. I'm very inspired, very fired up, and I hope everyone is just as inspired and fired up as I am. Oh my goodness. So don't forget to check out and submit for the Blue Mango Awards headed by Mr. Butch Carungay. There's about 200,000 prize money on this, so translate your stories to craft and get making. Our last session for this afternoon is will be joined by USEC Ernesto Abelia of the UNESCO Philippines National Commission, and he will deliver a message of support for the creative communities and industries. So please also watch out for FB Live this Saturday, October 31st at 10 a.m. It will be the closing program for Cebu Design Week, the Great ReCREATE. There will be a fireside chat to discuss everything that we learned, oh my goodness, over the 3-day design summit, and how these insights can help us foster a vibrant and dynamic creative economy to the new normal. So what can we do from now? Let's look for Filipinos working in creative spaces. Let's push them up, support them in any which way we can, and tell their stories. I will see you all this afternoon. Thank you for attending. Tag us on all your social media posts. I will see you later.
In our day and age, design is everywhere, and creativity can be found in everyone.
To celebrate this fact, and to help creatives remain pace-otive,
This year's Blue Mango Awards will pivot into timely and relevant categories that emphasize creativity in our daily lives and encourage productivity while in quarantine.
Over 200,000 pesos in cash prizes await the 24 winners, which will be announced in December 2020.
The new deadline is now set for November 25, 2020. Entries are open to anyone from the Visayas. For more info, please visit our site or email us at the address indicated below. We would like to thank Cebu Landmasters and Smart Communications for their generous support. We look forward to receiving your entries. Thank you, stay safe, and stay creative.
Sudungang atong dakbayan nang inahanglan ug tabang. Nagbaguod sa kadaghan sa kalisod nga gisaguban. Unta di na nato ni pasagdan, walay di masulbad kung tanan, magkahius lang sa pagpagkamana. Alang sa usag-usa, kita ragyud ang atong kaluwasan. Kayang gahom anaa sa katawan, kinsa pa man di ay ang magtinabangay, kinsa pa man di ay ang mag-inunungay, kinsa pa man di ay ang magdayong, kita ragi hapon ba. Kinsa pa man di ay aduna tay ikong usog nga di mabuntog, di mapukan. Antayon ta gihapon nga mag-abot mo, taliwala sa bawion ta panginabuhi nga napagaan. Balikon ta ang kaninatagang tanan, nakaaswagan di atong dakbayan. Maong giyawhang ang tanan, taragyud ang atong kay ang gahom anaa sa katawan, kinsa pa man di ay ang magtinabangay, kinsa pa man di ay ang ahong ana